In my first life, every single girl I chased in college either used me for favors, completely ignored my existence, or just sat back and watched me humiliate myself. Then, against all odds, I regressed right back to my freshman year. Only this time, I woke up with a cheat system, a crazy power that turned every dollar spent on me into raw strength, lethal skills, and untouchable status. I went back with one thing on my mind: pure, unadulterated revenge. On the train ride to campus, some rich, spoiled boyfriend knocked out my tooth. His desperate family offered me $800,000 to keep quiet. The spending system instantly credited every single dollar spent on fixing my face. And just like that, my very first enemy accidentally became my very first angel investor. Rhett Kavanaugh raised his trembling fist. I just wiped the blood from my mouth and smirked. "Go ahead," I told him. "You're paying by the punch." How much cash would Rhett fund my system with before he finally realized his victim was profiting off his rage? But to understand exactly why I was begging for another punch, we need to go back 24 hours. At my final, dead-end office job, I was 30 years old and completely finished. My long-term girlfriend had just cheated on me, and my life savings were entirely wiped out. To make it worse, my scumbag boss fired me in front of the entire floor. He held up a magazine article about our incredibly successful company owner. He went to Crestview State, my boss proudly announced to the room. Same exact school as Calvin Archer over here. Just look at how differently that worked out for him. One of my coworkers actually laughed out loud while I packed my pathetic life into a single cardboard box. For my entire first life, people had taken advantage of me, treating my basic kindness like it was a permission slip to walk all over me. I had paid the bills, constantly apologized for breathing, and waited until I was useful to absolutely everyone except myself. That same night, completely broken, I stepped over the yellow warning strip on an empty subway platform. A massive train roared into the tunnel. The blinding headlights rushed closer and closer. But right before it reached me, the station vanished into thin air. Suddenly, a flat, robotic voice echoed through the absolute darkness. "Spending system activation package is now available. You are granted one beginner wish, choose only once," and a single, unbreakable rule came right along with it. Verified spending creates points. Points will improve your approved attributes and skills. I honestly could have asked for a life of easy comfort and luxury. Instead, I asked to get back my tragically wasted years. "Send me right back to the beginning," I ordered the voice. "I will handle the rest." In an instant, the endless darkness snapped away. I blinked and opened my eyes. It was August, 2013. Eliza Sutton sat right across the train aisle. Eliza, the untouchable goddess of my old school, was peacefully reading by the window in a pretty summer dress. My cracked phone clearly showed the exact date. My wrinkled train ticket and my terribly cheap glasses matched the era perfectly. Suddenly, Eliza looked up from her book. "Calvin? Are you heading to Crestview State, too?" she asked. Before I could stop it, my 19-year-old mouth blurted out the exact same terrible pickup line from my pathetic first life. "Maybe fate assigned us these exact seats," I said. Eliza just stared at me blankly. "You bought the ticket, Calvin." Absolutely brutal. The campus goddess still had her flawless, ice-cold timing. Last time I lived this, I awkwardly flirted until she had to call her angry boyfriend. This time, I smartened up and stopped early. But it was already too late. Eliza called out toward the next train car. "Rhett!" Rhett stomped down the narrow aisle, rocking ridiculously expensive sneakers and a loud, flashy designer watch. Eliza's arrogant boyfriend wore his title like a literal set of ownership papers. Rhett aggressively planted one heavy hand on the back of her seat. "Is this random guy bothering you?" he demanded. Eliza calmly closed her book. "No, we just went to high school together." Rhett openly mocked my faded t-shirt, my beat-up canvas bag, and my thick, dorky glasses. "Then he should definitely know when to leave better people alone," he sneered. "Whatever." I just got up and headed straight to the snack counter. Dealing with my own hunger was way easier than arguing with this jealous, trust-fund bulldog. I bought a cheap cup of instant noodles. Suddenly, the glowing system flashed right before my eyes the second I paid. Purchase verified. Vision, poor. Strength, incredibly low. Overall appearance, severely below average. Available points are currently almost useless. Sure, this cheat system could entirely rebuild me from the ground up, but I only had enough spare cash to feed it ramen noodles. What a totally disrespectful tutorial level. Rhett actually followed me into the dining car and glared down at my sad cup. "Is that your pathetic college meal?" Rhett mocked, turning to his girlfriend. "Eliza, babe, my family can literally buy you anything. You definitely don't need to eat this broke kid food. But Eliza just smelled the hot noodles and shrugged. Actually, I want those. Damn. She had just picked cheap powdered broth over his endless money. I had some chicken strips and a fresh orange on my tray, too. Eliza politely asked for the chicken, so I happily charged her the exact sticker price. No freebies anymore. She gladly paid up. I handed back her change, sliding the orange across the table with it. Eliza lifted the fruit, looking amused. What's this for? She asked. Customer loyalty program, I deadpanned. She actually laughed out loud. Rhett's square jaw visibly tightened in absolute rage. A 50-cent orange had officially entered mortal combat with his ego, and the orange was totally winning. Furious, Rhett violently slapped the food right out of my hand. Stop trying to impress my damn girlfriend, you loser. Eliza immediately stood up. Rhett, seriously, calm down. But he completely ignored her. Naturally, the spoiled brat pointed a finger right at my chest. Apologize right now. Grab your trashy bag and move to another car. All around us, passengers started peeking over their phones and books to watch the drama. Good. The idiot wanted a public stage. I calmly picked up my fallen orange and wiped it on my sleeve. You are literally shouting at instant noodles, man, I told him, perfectly unfazed. I genuinely do not know what you thought would happen here today. Several nearby passengers couldn't hold back and started laughing. Snapping, Rhett brutally shoved me backward into a hard metal seat frame. Eliza panicked and caught his arm. Stop it, she yelled. But Rhett aggressively tore himself free. He keeps disrespecting me. I slowly stood back up. My old knees were tremblingly weak, and my uncorrected eyesight was absolute garbage. But his fragile pride was so much weaker. Your girlfriend just asked for some food, I told him, keeping my voice steady. And you somehow turned it into a dramatic hostage negotiation. That was the breaking point. Rhett grabbed me by the collar and violently threw me out into the narrow aisle. My mouth smashed directly into a metal seat edge. Blinding pain instantly split my entire jaw. Something hard and white clicked as it bounced across the floorboards. It was my front tooth. The whole carriage went dead silent. Rhett suddenly saw pure disgust written all over Eliza's face. But he was too far gone, and he punched me anyway. The first hit hurt like hell. The second hit practically tilted the train car. By the third brutal punch, panicked passengers were already screaming for the security guard. I just covered my bleeding head as concerned shoes gathered in a circle around us. But in my mind, the math suddenly became absolutely beautiful. He had serious trust fund money, and I had a whole train car full of witnesses. Eliza was practically crying, begging him to stop. What this idiot didn't realize was that every single extra swing just exponentially raised the final price tag of saving his precious family reputation. I intentionally lowered my guard, just enough for him to see my widening, blood-stained smile. Is that really all you've got? I taunted through a mouthful of blood. Rhett's face twisted in pure rage. You think this is funny, you freak? I casually spat a glob of blood off to the side. No, I whispered. I just think it's about to get incredibly expensive. He roared and swung again, but Eliza forcefully shoved herself right between us. Rhett, we are completely done. Get the hell away from him, she screamed. That rejection hurt his fragile ego way more than any punch I could ever throw. Nearby, a woman raised her phone, recording everything, while a brave student firmly blocked the aisle. The other passengers swarmed Rhett in seconds, boxing him in right before the transit guard tackled him to the floor. Me, the former doormat, I had completely won the crowd. But Rhett just kept digging his own grave. He provoked me. He kept screaming like a spoiled brat. The lady recording everything on her phone just snapped back. You literally knocked his tooth out, you psycho. He was flirting with Eliza. Rhett yelled, desperately pointing a finger at me. But Eliza just looked disgusted and took a huge step away from him. He just asked Calvin for some food, someone else yelled, and you straight up attacked him. By the time we hit the very next stop, the transit police dragged a kicking and screaming Rhett away. An ambulance crew gently lifted me onto a stretcher. God, my jaw throbbed like crazy, and my ribs felt like they were on absolute fire. My consciousness was already slipping into the dark. But right then, the ambulance charge posted to my system. A robotic voice chimed in my head, direct benefit expense verified, points credited. I stared at the glowing notification in absolute disbelief. The system's rule had a massive loophole. Any verified expenses paid for me actually counted, as long as I was the direct beneficiary. That meant Rhett's ultra-rich family could literally pay for my entire recovery, all while secretly funding my system's growth. Oh man, this was about to get so good. My very first investor was completely cooked. By the time that train left the next station, the ambulance had already dropped me off at a luxury, private hospital room, 100% paid for by Rhett's daddy's credit card. Eliza showed up a little later, gently holding my completely busted glasses in one hand. She quietly placed them right next to my hospital bed. "You look awful," she whispered softly. I cracked a bloody smile and mumbled, "With the glasses on, or off?" She tried so hard to keep a serious face, but she totally failed. I pointed right at the massive gap in my teeth and joked, "Hey, at least Red improved my air ventilation just for asking Calvin for food." Eliza quickly covered her mouth, bursting into laughter despite the horrible situation. "You are absolutely impossible," she giggled. Honestly, toothless flirting really should have been illegal, but whatever, I had already survived way worse decisions in my past life. Then, Eliza actually handed me her phone and asked for my number. The completely unreachable goddess from my first life was saving my contact info, all while her psychotic ex-boyfriend was sitting in a holding cell under heavy guard. She paused, her fingers hovering right over the glowing screen. "Red and we are completely finished," she said firmly. I tried to keep my voice as level as possible. "Just because of today?" I asked. Eliza slowly shook her head. "No, today just finally showed me what I kept making stupid excuses for." She added, "You were the one literally bleeding on the floor, and yet you still kept track of everyone watching." I only got to enjoy that sweet role reversal for about 3 seconds before the heavy door swung open and Rhett's parents marched in. Mr. Kavanaugh walked in wearing a ridiculously expensive designer coat, looking completely and utterly exhausted. I mean, his precious heir had just been caught on high-definition video, brutally attacking a broke college freshman. Mrs. Kavanaugh started frantically apologizing before she even reached the side of my bed. "We just kept cleaning up after him," Mrs. Kavanaugh admitted, her voice trembling. "He started believing that every single mess he made belonged to somebody else." Well, Rhett had finally made a mess that came with an $800,000 price tag. Their slick corporate lawyer hovered near the door, clutching a single manila folder. Good. One folder meant they wanted a fast settlement. Mr. Kavanaugh gently placed the written offer right on my bed. $800,000 in cold hard cash, plus every single medical, travel, and private luxury room charge covered in full. I reached up and slowly touched my missing tooth. "Your son kept punching me long after Eliza begged him to stop," I said coldly. "And you know that viral video has perfect audio, right?" His wife's hands instantly started shaking uncontrollably. Mr. Kavanaugh swallowed hard, pushed the settlement paper just a bit closer to me, and nervously glanced back toward the heavy hospital door. I guessed he desperately wanted the wire transfer finished before his idiot son found another brilliant way to make things worse. I accepted the deal, and then gave them the exact dramatic performance they desperately needed to hear. "Throwing money at this won't fix Rhett," I told his devastated parents with a heavy sigh. "You have to make him understand that human beings aren't just mere objects he can violently control." Mrs. Kavanaugh practically cried as she thanked me. They immediately initiated the massive wire transfer. She thanked me one more time before they finally hurried out of the room. Their pathetic son had truly achieved top-tier, elite clown status. But their lawyers smartly kept the final legal release firmly inside his folder. Why? Because Rhett still owed me a very public, formal apology before I even thought about signing my name. Suddenly, the system chimed as the payment posted immediately. Settlement payment received. Total available points, 3,187,000. My hands went completely ice cold. Holy crap, the system cheat I discovered on the train was actually real. Having a balance that massive was incredibly dangerous. I didn't hesitate, immediately spending a huge chunk of points to fix my awful eyesight first. A warm wave washed over me as my vision perfectly cleared from the center outward. Everything in the room sharpened into crystal clear focus. Eliza's stunning face suddenly came into view, way more clearly than I had ever seen her before. Man, her beauty was just totally unfair. Seriously, she looked even more gorgeous in ultra-high definition. Next up, I dumped a ton of points into upgrading my basic physical appearance. The bruising and swelling from the fight stayed, but beneath all of that, my tired, dull skin, my terrible hunched posture, and my facial asymmetry rapidly began correcting themselves. This system was insane, letting me tweak my health and appearance like a video game character. Regrowing an entire missing tooth required a much higher medical restoration level, which I didn't have yet. But whatever, my brand new, handsome face could easily wait behind these temporary purple bruises for a little while longer. Plus, keeping that massive gap in my smile served as the perfect, guilt-tripping receipt of Rhett's crime. But Eliza, being as sharp as she was, noticed my subtle changes before I even opened my mouth. She had literally watched me painfully squint my way through school for years. But just now, I had effortlessly read the tiny, microscopic dosage label on a medicine bottle across the room before she even could. She leaned in close, her eyes searching mine. "Your eyes look different," she murmured. I just smirked and replied, "Yeah, well, I finally saw my hospital bill." It opened my eyes. She just rolled hers in response, and the very next morning, she brought me an absurdly thick economics textbook as revenge. Eliza playfully slammed the massive book right onto my chest. "Here, this heavy thing should finally keep you quiet," she teased. I groaned, holding the giant brick of paper against my sore ribs. "Attempted murder, part 2, I gasped dramatically. But Eliza just laughed, returning later that same afternoon with a fantasy web novel she actually loved reading. We sat there playfully arguing over the plot's completely ridiculous hero until visiting hours were almost completely over. Just before she had to leave, Eliza pulled out her phone and put her powerful father on speaker. He had already listened to the viral passenger recordings and heard her personal version of the brutal fight. "You manage to stay calmer than men who are twice your age," her father's deep voice boomed through the tiny speaker. "Thank you for keeping my daughter Eliza completely out of the worst of that mess." I humbly told him that Rhett was the one who had created all that insane danger in the first place. "Eliza was the one who bravely stepped in and helped end it," I added. Instantly, her father's stern tone warmed up noticeably. "You know, in my first pathetic life, I always stupidly mistook small, polite kindnesses for deep promises. But not this time. This time, I closely watched what people actually did, not what they said. And Eliza just kept coming back to see me every single day." 2 days later, Rhett finally showed up for his mandatory, humiliating formal apology. His stern father and their pricey lawyer stood like bodyguards right behind him, while the police guard stayed out in the hall. Rhett kept his bruised eyes glued firmly to the hospital floor, totally terrified to even look up before anyone spoke. Rhett finally bowed his head. "I'm sorry for attacking you," he muttered. His dad just stood there, waiting for him to finish. Rhett kept his eyes glued to the floor, but I made him sweat. I waited even longer. This jealous bulldog absolutely loved showing off for an audience on the train, but he sure hated having one right now. I wasn't letting him off easy. I made him say Eliza's name out loud and apologize to her, too. Yeah, maybe it was a little petty, but the goddess deserved to hear him admit he was the problem out loud. Finally, the lawyer slid the ultimate release form right in front of me. I signed my name on that single page, and just like that, the whole process was over. Almost instantly, my system posted the completed receipt. It verified a direct benefit spending of $1,150,000. Right after Rhett tucked his tail and left, Eliza's dad actually came to visit me in person. He thanked me for not dragging his daughter into the mess and even tried to hand me extra cash for all the trouble. I just pushed the envelope right back. Eliza was trapped in that ugly scene just as much as I was. "I am not going to charge her family for that," I told him. Her dad studied my face for a long second, then quietly tucked the envelope away. "Come visit us once you are all settled in at school," he offered warmly. "Our door is always open." Beside him, Eliza flashed me a grateful smile. Rhett had lost absolutely everything: his girlfriend, his parents' money, the crowd's respect, and the fake story he tried to spin about me. Meanwhile, I walked away with a massive settlement, 3,187,000 system points, Eliza's phone number, and exactly one ugly gap in my smile. The cash cleared my account before sunset, and my spending system officially opened up. I lined up my next big purchases before anyone from my pathetic old college life could ever lay eyes on the former doormat again. The morning after I got discharged, I took Rhett's settlement card straight to 2 starter condos near the campus. He might have broken one of my teeth, but I planned to buy 2 literal doors with his money. The bank perfectly linked the settlement funds to a sleek Blackdeer card that my spending system had generated just for me. The real estate agent took one look at me, a bruised-up freshman holding a cheap canvas bag and one seriously expensive card. Her customer service smile came out completely crooked. "Are your parents joining us today?" she asked, clearly doubting me. I just shook my head. "No." Immediately, she reached over and opened a much smaller, cheaper brochure. "Then we should probably discuss rentals that fit your budget," she said condescendingly. I ignored her and pointed straight at 2 small units in an aging complex. "I am buying those." She checked my face again. Honestly, the missing tooth was doing terrible work for my credibility. But I clearly remembered this exact district from my first life. I knew that in exactly 2 years, a massive redevelopment boom would completely double the rents and drag the property values right up to the moon with them. I slapped down massive down payments, financed the rest, and threw both condos straight into immediate rental management. Just like I remembered, boom. 2 rental doors secured, and no boring property lectures needed. The black tier card cleared instantly. The agent practically stood at attention before the receipt even finished printing out. She whipped out her phone and called the rental manager right in front of me. One of the units actually already had a paying tenant inside. The second unit just needed a fresh coat of paint and a quick lock change. Both of them would be churning out passive rent long before the district's big boom went public. Mr. Archer, rest assured, we can handle absolutely everything, the agent promised, completely changing her tune. Just 5 minutes earlier, she had tried to hand me the broke kid brochure. Now, she was offering me premium coffee with both hands and calling me Mr. I walked out of there holding 2 sets of keys and a significantly thinner bank balance. These properties were a genius move, but they also locked up most of my cash where I couldn't stupidly spend it twice. That very afternoon, I rented out a sprawling luxury suite near campus and fired up my spending system. My settlement cash had turned into real estate, but those juicy system points were still waiting for me. First things first, I tried to magically restore my missing tooth. A prompt flashed. Medical restoration unavailable. System level 2 required. It also stated that 3 advanced health skills must reach level 3. I just sat there, glaring blankly at the floating message. This ridiculous system had perfectly repaired my bad eyesight, completely cleaned up my battered face, but stubbornly refused to fix one single tooth out of pure professional spite. Excellent priorities you've got there, I muttered sarcastically to the ceiling. Without hesitating, I dumped my points and slammed the spending system straight up to level 2. A flood of new options burst open: stronger physical attribute, correction, elite professional skills, and a small, rare chance for everyday purchases to trigger themed gifts. That last rule was going to be a huge game changer. Basically, if I bought something totally ordinary, the system might toss in a supernatural bonus that matched it. I immediately blew my points on finance, accounting, marketing, and raw cognition skills. The sudden rush of pure knowledge hit me so hard it physically folded me over the bed. Complex balance sheets, advanced pricing models, obscure tax rules, and entire market patterns all violently slammed into my brain at the exact same time. Blood immediately started dripping from my nose, and the entire hotel room violently tilted around me. Gaining this kind of overwhelming power definitely came with a harsh physical price tag. Good. At least this overpowered cheat system was honest about that one thing. When the crushing pressure finally faded, I could glance at my property contracts just once and instantly spot every single weak legal clause. I didn't stop there. I pumped even more points directly into sheer strength, physical coordination, extra height, perfect posture, flawless skin, and optimal facial balance. My shoulders visibly widened, my core balance tightened up, and the system literally pulled another full inch of growth that my original body had completely wasted. A freshly bruised but dangerously sharp freshman stared back at me from the mirror, looking like a total stranger compared to the exhausted, beaten-down man I used to be. When room service finally knocked, the attendant checked my door number twice in total confusion. "Mr. Archer?" she asked hesitantly. I just lifted up my ID to prove it was me. Still me, I smirked. Her wide eyes darted frantically back and forth between my old ID photo and my heavily upgraded face. Suddenly, she became incredibly careful with my food tray. Unfortunately, that damn tooth gap still remained. Fine, whatever. I would just keep the gap as my own petty little receipt for Rhett's beatdown. Exactly 2 weeks later, after my hospital stay had forced me to miss regular registration, I boldly strolled right into Crestview State University's branch campus. Now, Crestview was just the lower tier, overlooked branch campus permanently attached to a much more prestigious main school. In my miserable first life, I had arrived at this exact same place practically apologizing to everyone just for existing. But this time? The front desk administrator took one long look at my brutal medical records, and then stared wide-eyed at my heavy black tier card as I casually swiped to pay off my remaining school fees. I firmly asked for the much quieter top-floor dorm room instead of the cramped, crowded shoebox I got stuck with in my first life. The administrator immediately started making excuses, stammering about how freshmen rarely ever received housing upgrades. I slammed the hospital note down right next to my prepaid housing receipt. Boom! The administrator instantly shut her mouth. Suddenly, a dorm room opened up just for me. The moment I stepped outside the building, 2 girls whipped their heads around to stare. One of them literally walked straight into a signpost. Over by the fountain, a group of students glanced at my dorm key, then did a massive double take at my face. By lunchtime, random strangers were whispering about which elite campus family I belonged to. Seriously? I had spent half my damn life blaming my clunky glasses for being a total outcast. Turns out, those thick frames were just sealing away the masterpiece underneath. Hey, in my defense, I was absolutely loving this glow-up, but my cash was running dangerously low after paying for the condos, the suite, the fees, and all those system upgrades. While walking to class, some sketchy street vendor waved a cheap self-help manual right in my face. "Improve your mind for $10, the guy promised. I handed him a $10 bill. Bold claim, sure, but I bought it anyway just to test out the system's themed gift rule. Ding! The system chimed before I even reached the end of the block. Themed gift acquired. A shiny new digital study guide popped up in my system inventory. It cost me practically nothing, yet it boosted my actual cognition stats just by studying it. My $10 experiment had completely bypassed an upgrade that normally cost thousands. For once, being cheap actually paid off big time. The next morning, the entire finance classroom went dead silent the second I walked in late. I had missed the first few weeks because that jerk Rhett had treated my face like his personal punching bag. Now, everyone was staring at me like that beatdown had somehow upgraded my entire existence. I faced the shocked room and smirked. I'm Calvin Archer. I'm late, I'm single, and I am currently accepting contact requests from ladies with perfect attendance. A bunch of the girls instantly giggled. Phones whipped out in a flash. One girl added me on social media before I even reached the closest empty desk, while another boldly asked if I was a fashion model. The guys just sat there, watching the room's entire attention shift to me in real time. Look, I spent my entire first life being completely invisible to the world. I think I was allowed to enjoy this little software update. At the front desk, the strict class monitor, Renee Chandler, was busy collecting class fees. She didn't even crack a smile. Renee had always been proud, sharp, and effortlessly cruel to the old me. She had the look of a girl who had never lost a single argument in her entire life. The ice-cold class monitor just held out her hand. $200. I calmly handed over the cash. Does that fee come with your phone number? I teased. Renee slammed her receipt book shut. It comes with the privilege of getting away from my desk. Ah, there she was. Same fiery temper, just under much better lighting. Suddenly, Kayla Donnelly leaned over from the very next row. She was the toxic classmate who happily drained my wallet for gifts in my past life, keeping me trapped in the friend zone forever. She smirked down at my phone. That model looks pretty ancient. Did the hospital bills drain all your money? The shameless gold digger had officially started her little audit. I glanced down at her shoes. Oh, those are cute. Her face instantly brightened up. Really? I gave a slight nod. Yeah, they almost distracted me from the fact that this feels like a job interview. Jillian Avery, the much friendlier, green-haired girl sitting right beside her, giggled into her notebook. Kayla quickly tried to recover her ego. I was only making conversation. So was I fired right back. Kayla leaned in a little closer. Anyway, what exactly does your family do? I looked her dead in the eye. Mostly, they just worry about me. But Kayla kept pressing. So, what kind of car do you drive? I pointed straight toward the transit station. The big kind. With train tracks, Jillian burst out laughing all over again. Kayla just tapped my beat-up phone. Camouflage, she whispered, fully convinced I was secretly rich. She leaned in even closer. In my first life, a single sweet word from Kayla would have emptied my entire bank account. This time around? She got exactly one fake compliment and a permanently closed door. Out of nowhere, another classmate loudly asked if I thought Renee was the prettiest girl in the room. Renee kept writing, but I saw her shoulders instantly tense up. Honestly? I care way more about inner qualities, I replied smoothly. Renee's pen came to a dead halt. Jillian leaned over and whispered, "Ooh, that sounded targeted." I whispered back, "Well, it definitely found its target." Renee finally looked up, glaring. "Do you always talk this damn much?" I just smiled. Only when our lovely class monitor keeps asking me follow-up questions. Her death glare practically promised me a mountain of future paperwork and maybe a little bit of light arson. Later that night, up in my top-floor quad dorm, 3 absolute strangers were lounging on my bed like it was their own inherited property. Cody Maddox was sitting right on my mattress, loudly crunching on chips. He had the exact punchable face of a guy who would leak your deepest secrets to the whole campus before breakfast. Jordan Keller stood over by the window with his arms crossed tightly. He was glaring at me like defending this dorm room was his sworn, unpaid duty. And the third, completely silent roommate had dumped all of his heavy boxes right onto my desk. Cody pointed a greasy finger at the single remaining, terrible bunk. You take that one, newbie. We already settled this. I calmly placed my bag on the floor. Get off my bed. Jordan immediately stepped up to my face. Oh yeah? You planning to make us? I didn't blink. I reached into my bag, pulled out a solid steel claw hammer from my old toolbox, checked the heavy iron head, and placed it gently right on the desk. Clack. Planning? I asked, my voice dangerously soft. No, I'm just really tired. The room went dead silent. I casually picked up one of the heavy boxes and dropped it right next to Cody. Is this yours? Cody jumped up so fast his chips went flying all over the floor. The quiet roommate practically teleported to grab his bags. Jordan just kept staring at the hammer in horror. Then he stared at my dead calm face. Where are you going? I asked politely. Jordan ripped the door open. Giving you some space. I nodded slowly. How thoughtful. They scrambled out of the room. The funniest part? I hadn't even threatened a single person. Their own wild imaginations did all the heavy lifting. By the next morning, Cody had already blabbed to half the floor that the ridiculously good-looking new freshman slept with a deadly hammer and smiled like a total psycho during confrontations. And just like that, my glorious reputation as a discount psychopath was fully born before I even finished unpacking. Suddenly, girls were crowding the elevators just to get a peek at me. The guys on my floor absolutely stopped touching my stuff. Cody and Jordan tiptoed back in, politely asked for permission before even breathing near my desk, and instantly became the most highly motivated, well-behaved roommates on campus. Cody even showed up with breakfast. I figured we should start over, he announced, trying to play nice. I stared at the food. Is the hammer included? I deadpanned. Cody almost dropped the bag, and Jordan finally burst out laughing. That running joke bought me more privacy than any lock ever could. The wild rumors also turned my sudden wealth into the biggest mystery on campus. Kayla kept pushing her camouflage theory to Jillian. And Jillian? She actually started bringing me snacks just to study me like a lab rat. I shut down all their fake friendliness and just focused on studying. Honestly, that ticked people off way more than begging for attention ever did. 3 days later, Renee plopped down right across from me in the library. You got dumped, she stated like it was a proven fact. I slowly looked up from my intelligence textbook. Good afternoon to you, too, I muttered. Renee just tapped my brutal study schedule. Guys do not change this drastically without a heartbreak. Let me guess, she cheated on you? You vanished off the grid. And now you are rebuilding your entire life just to make her deeply regret it. Our class monitor was practically erupting with drama. By the time she finished, she had made up a tragic rainstorm, a dramatic train station goodbye, some filthy rich rival, and a bitter reunion. I just stared at her in disbelief. Tell me, do you write novels for a living? Renee's face completely froze for a split second. Gotcha. Back in my past life, I had accidentally caught a glimpse of a very specific username and an update request on her laptop screen. She had practically bullied me away from the desk before I could read another word. But I never forgot that little green icon, the weird cucumber avatar, and the sheer panic when she slammed the screen shut. Back then, I just assumed our proud class monitor was secretly hiding a boyfriend. But the adult me? I recognized an author dashboard the second I saw one. Renee quickly stood up. I have class business to handle. She scrambled away way too fast. That little slip-up put her secret account right in the palm of my hand, and she had practically handed it to me herself. That evening, locked in my dorm, I dropped some cash on a brand new laptop, a high-end phone, and a fresh SIM card. The purchase immediately triggered another system reward. Anonymous Super SIM acquired. System functions included masked registration, a totally clean secondary number, and a voice filter. 3 powerful tools. Plenty of ways to cause absolute chaos. I registered a completely fresh account without linking it to my actual phone. The burner number instantly passed verification. I tested the voice filter just once, heard a complete stranger's voice echo back, and smirked, saving that trick for later. I searched the fragments of that username. I remembered exactly one account that perfectly matched both the avatar and her overly dramatic writing style. The screen name was Velvet Cucumber. I fired off a friend request attached with a single sentence about a deleted chapter, something only the true author would ever recognize. But before Velvet Cucumber could even respond to my trap, Derek Larkin violently snatched my notebook during the very next morning's lecture. Derek was that obnoxious, loudmouth classmate who constantly bragged that his filthy rich family owned half the luxury buildings around campus. The so-called apartment prince mockingly waved my private property notes in front of the entire room. Calvin studies condos because he actually thinks reading about rich people will magically make him rich. Derek loudly announced to the crowd. Renee frowned and looked over. Kayla twisted around in her seat. A perfect audience was forming. I coldly held out my hand. Give it back to me. Derek just smirked. Why do not you tell everyone what your dirt-poor family owns first? 2 condos, I answered flatly. The whole room erupted in laughter because I sounded so pathetic. Derek laughed the absolute loudest, arrogantly slapping my notebook against his palm. 2 cheap, trashy units, and this loser actually thinks he understands real estate. Derek sneered, looking right at Renee. My family literally owns the entire skyline outside this window. Derek dramatically spread his arms wide. My family owns whole massive buildings. He really should have stopped talking right there. Because in my past life, Derek's greedy relatives had completely torn each other apart in a highly public, vicious war over those exact apartments. I used to rent a place right nearby and watch the whole messy dispute unfold, simply because their pathetic screaming matches kept making the local news. I slowly stood up. Your family barely shares a handful of apartments inside 2 measly buildings. The actual towers belong to a massive corporate development company. Derek's arrogant smirk instantly slipped off his face. I did not stop. Your father only controls 1 single unit. The rest are locked down by your relatives in a bitter, messy estate dispute. So, go ahead. Show us just 1 single deed for an entire building. Derek nervously glanced toward the door. I aggressively pointed straight out the window. Pick any tower you claim to own. Go on, name the exact company written on the deed. His mouth opened and closed like a dying fish. Absolutely nothing useful came out. Renee sharply snapped her notebook shut. He asked you to produce 1 simple deed, Derek. Kayla completely dropped her smile and glared at him. The whole class held their breath. Derek shakily put my notebook down. That is private family business. I slowly nodded. 5 seconds ago, you were bragging about your massive public family wealth. Derek completely shut his mouth, turning pale. 2 classmates quietly deleted the desperate text messages where they had begged him for networking introductions. Kayla looked disgusted and completely turned her chair away from him. The humiliated apartment prince sat back down, realizing he now owned exactly 2 fewer towers than he had just claimed. Right after class, Renee cornered me at the door. How on earth did you know all of that? Renee demanded. I just read a lot, I answered smoothly. She stared at me, analyzing me like a glaring plot hole she desperately needed to solve. Right then, my phone vibrated in my pocket. Velvet Cucumber had just accepted my friend request. Renee was standing barely 3 feet away from me, glaring at me in real life, while the very account I knew was secretly hers had just opened its front door to me online. By lunchtime the very next day, back inside our stuffy finance classroom, Derek's totally humiliating public collapse had completely changed the power dynamics of who actually got listened to. The fake apartment prince finally shut his mouth. Kayla cheerfully brought me lunch. Jillian eagerly brought over dessert. Renee practically glared holes through both of those women, all while the secret author account I knew she was hiding sat quietly waiting on my phone screen. Just 1 response about that deleted chapter was all I needed to prove I had finally caught her. Kayla gently slid a nice boxed meal onto my desk. You skipped breakfast again, did not you? I am completely broke, I lied with a straight face. She raised an eyebrow and stared right at my brand new laptop. Well, your version of being broke sure comes with some ridiculously high-end specifications. Jillian slammed down a drink. He's rich in mystery, she teased. Terrible currency, I fired back. Just keep the food coming. This gold digger with a calculator for a heart had once trained me to pay for every single crumb of attention. Now, she was the one buying the crumbs. Renee glared at us from the front row. Class starts in 3 minutes. This isn't a restaurant. I just popped open Kayla's lunchbox. Then why is the service improving? Renee pressed her pen down so hard, the ink bled straight through to the next page. That afternoon, I strolled back in with an expensive cake and fruit cups, perfectly labeled for everyone who had fed me. Kayla got strawberries, Jillian got melon. And Renee, she got absolutely nothing. Until she swallowed her pride and asked. Renee marched up and stood right beside my desk. Where's mine? She demanded. I just smirked. I thought you only cared about inner qualities. Renee's smile turned absolutely dangerous. I slid a mango cup across the desk. The class monitor volcano snatched it up without a single word of thanks. Still, she took the mango. In my book, that counted as a win. Whenever my classmates asked what kind of woman I was into, I threw out completely different answers just to mess with them. Kayla immediately looked hopeful. Jillian just looked entertained, while Renee rolled her eyes in annoyance. Kayla pushed for a solid metric. Pretty or loyal, she pressed. I leaned back and answered, both sounds efficient. Jillian leaned seductively across the aisle. Rich, I told her with a wink, I'm always open to scholarships. Renee slammed her folder shut. He just likes attention, Renee snapped. I caught her gaze. You noticed. It was true. The spotlight was finally on me, and I was going to keep them all competing for it. The class's next big distraction was a Saturday safari trip. Renee, acting the perfect leader, collected all the payments and barked out the meeting points. She still hadn't thanked me for that mango. So, over the next 3 days, I secretly fired off small cash donations straight through her anonymous author page. The platform dashboard tracked every single payment. Funny how money makes an anonymous stranger completely impossible to ignore. On the third night back in my dorm room, her pen name, Velvet Cucumber, finally responded. She messaged, "Why are you asking about a deleted chapter?" I typed back, "Because the published version ends with a random blue umbrella and absolutely zero explanation." The typing bubble paused. Then she finally answered, "It belonged to the heroine's mother." Boom, I had cornered her. Only the actual author knew that scrapped ending. Our uptight class monitor, Renee Chandler, was none other than Velvet Cucumber. She had absolutely no idea that the anonymous superfan, praising her pacing, was the exact same guy she wanted kicked out of her classroom. Man, what a beautiful little mess this was turning into. I stopped chatting right there. Letting Renee squirm in suspense was way more useful than pushing my luck. When Saturday morning hit, the class gathered at the subway for the safari trip Renee had painstakingly organized. Kayla immediately hooked onto my left arm. Jillian boldly claimed my right. They both smirked and called it crowd control. Renee glared at our little trio and checked off her attendance sheet with completely unnecessary violence. I managed to escape near the restrooms and shot her a private text. Emergency. I'm trapped without toilet paper. Renee replied instantly. Why the hell are you telling me? Renee shot back. I replied, class monitor duty. She countered, go ask Kayla. She seems deeply committed to your survival. I typed, I need somebody responsible. The typing bubble popped up, vanished, and then popped up again. Finally, Renee asked, what's in it for me? I offered her one sincere compliment. Renee ruthlessly demanded two. I jokingly called her greedy. She bluntly told me to stay trapped in the stall. I caved and texted that she looked incredible in that fitted safari outfit, and absolutely terrifying with an attendance sheet. Both were totally true. But honestly, the second compliment did most of the heavy lifting. Renee stomped over to the restroom area, clutching a pack of tissues and wearing an expression usually reserved for tax evaders. I casually stepped out from behind the corner, holding 2 ice cream cones. Renee stopped dead in her tracks. You lied to me. I just held up the treats. I upgraded the emergency. Renee aggressively snatched one of the cones. You are totally unbearable. I smirked. And yet, here you are. She bit into the ice cream, furiously looking away to hide her face. I only came for the sake of the class, she muttered. I nodded slowly. Of course. The class clearly loves vanilla. In my defense, her bright red blush was totally winning the argument. Right on cue, my system chimed in my head. Flirting skill acquired through successful use. I spent my points to upgrade it before Renee even finished her cone. The system actually rewarded risky behavior, too. Apparently, weaponized shamelessness had a legitimate career path. Suddenly, a little boy chasing a rogue balloon clipped my knee right by the park bench. I stumbled forward, crashing right into Renee. My hand instinctively caught her waist to steady us both, while my other hand completely crushed my ice cream cone against my shirt. Her shoulder slammed into my chest. We both froze for a split second before she violently shoved me away, her face burning crimson. And that was the exact moment Kayla appeared out of nowhere. Stopping just 3 steps away, she hooked her arm aggressively through mine. There you are, Kayla purred. Then, her eyes locked onto Renee's ice cream. Did he buy that for you? She asked coldly. Renee stood her ground. He owed me a favor. Kayla's eyes narrowed into slits. For what, exactly? Renee just locked eyes with me. Emergency services, I covered, nearly choking on a laugh. One fake bathroom crisis had just sparked a very real jealousy war between them. Now that is what I call efficient work. On the train ride back home, Kayla stopped dead beside a shiny jewelry display, gazing longingly at a painfully familiar necklace. In my past life, I had starved and saved for months just to buy her that exact same design. I foolishly thought the gift would finally make her choose me. Instead, it only made me that much easier to use. I bought the necklace without batting an eye. Kayla's face lit up like a Christmas tree when I handed her the velvet box. "Oh my God," she gasped. "You actually remembered that I liked this?" "I remember everything," I answered smoothly. She heard a sweeping romantic gesture. I heard the sound of an old debt finally closing out. "That's the absolute last gift you'll ever get from the pathetic version of me who used to beg," I told her coldly. Kayla's smile instantly faltered, but then her greedy eyes dropped to the hefty price tag, and that fake smile snapped right back into place. Outside, Renee was watching us intently through the store window. Her piercing gaze stayed glued to that jewelry box right up until I turned to face her. The calculated purchase triggered another themed reward in my head. System item, pet collar acquired. Mild mood and rapport modifier unlocked. Cannot compel action or create consent. A pitch-black collar suddenly dropped into my system inventory. I just stared at the thing. This damn necklace had already cost me my peace of mind. The bonus item looked like it was practically begging for lawsuits and nasty rumors. Look, I knew this collar was nothing but trouble. I just hadn't met the exact disaster it was meant for yet. I shoved it deep into storage. Later that night, back in the dorm, Velvet Cucumber sent me a fresh chapter from her romance novel. Honestly, her heroine completely swapped personalities the second the plot desperately needed a rescue. And the arrogant male lead? He won arguments just by bragging about his bank account. Even Derek would have called that wealth flexing a bit too subtle. I sighed, highlighted 3 glaring issues, and completely rewrote one scene. Velvet Cucumber immediately fired back, "You cut half the dialogue." I calmly typed my reply, because he kept repeating the exact same threat. She pushed back hard. "He's supposed to be this dominant alpha." I shot back, "He can totally dominate a scene without sounding like he's giving a boring quarterly corporate presentation." She went completely dead silent for 5 whole minutes. Finally, she typed, "Okay, your version is actually better." Boom. Online, Renee had just swallowed her pride and accepted my judgment. She had literally never done that to my actual face. Seeing an opening, I sent her a bold proposal. "Let's co-write this dominant executive novel, split the paid chapter income evenly, and let the platform track every single dollar." Velvet Cucumber accepted the deal. Our newly revised chapter went live the very next morning. Almost instantly, the reader comments drastically improved. By that evening, our dashboard flashed with our very first shared payout. During class, Renee checked that number on her screen, totally failing to hide a bright, genuine smile. Then she glanced up, caught me staring, and instantly snapped back to her cold, usual expression like she needed special authorization just to feel joy. It was wild. She was happily begging an anonymous stranger online for another scene, while completely ignoring me, Calvin Archer, in real life. A few days later, Cody dragged me out to a casual dorm dinner, which got a lot less casual the second Victoria Whitmore sat down. Victoria was the untouchable, wealthy beauty from international relations. Her family's insane money was practically campus folklore at this point. Cody nervously shifted his plate, the server suddenly appeared out of nowhere, and the entire table's volume dropped to a whisper before she even spoke a word. She was wearing this sleek black dress that made every single guy at the table suddenly remember how to sit up straight. Yeah, I noticed it too, but I still knew how to talk. Victoria locked eyes with me. "So, you're the freshman with the hammer," she purred. Cody grinned like an idiot and chimed in, "He's also the guy who has 3 different women feeding him." Great, the campus gossip broadcaster was starting his career early. "I own exactly 1 hammer," I told Victoria flatly. "And for the record, those women are just independent contractors." Victoria let out a musical laugh and boldly took the empty seat right next to me. Exactly 10 minutes later, Renee finally showed up for the dinner. She took one look at Victoria leaning in way too close to me, and instantly froze at the end of the table. Her icy gaze snapped from Victoria's stunning dress directly down to my plate. I awkwardly held up a takeout box. There's fried rice left." Renee just glared daggers at me. "So, you saved me your leftovers," she spat, voice dripping with venom. I tilted the box defensively. Hey, you got here after all the food was gone. Beside me, Victoria hid a sly smile behind her water glass. Renee snatched the box, spun on her heel, and stormed off. Damn it. That actually hurt a lot more than I thought it would. I mean, I wanted a reaction, but seeing her actually upset still pinched my chest. So, I grabbed a fresh container of fried rice and followed her outside. Renee stood there, arms tightly crossed. Go give it to Victoria, she snapped. I calmly held out the warm container. She already has food, I replied. Renee refused to look at me, staring angrily out the window. Yeah, well, she clearly has your attention, too. Boom. There it was. Renee had finally said the quiet, jealous part out loud. I gently offered the container again, but she stubbornly refused it and just walked away into the night. 5 minutes later, my phone buzzed. It was Velvet Cucumber, furiously messaging me that Calvin Archer was an arrogant show-off who was busy dining with some rich girl. I quickly answered from my secret account. Maybe he's just playing hot and cold, I typed. Velvet Cucumber instantly replied, why the hell would anyone do that? I smirked and wrote back, to make a fiercely proud woman finally admit what she actually wants. The read receipt popped up on my screen, right as I watched Renee standing across the dark street, intensely glaring down at her phone. The deception was totally working. But man, it also felt a little uglier every single time she trusted my hidden persona more than the real me. Back inside the restaurant, Cody excitedly invited the whole group out for karaoke. I flat out refused. The massive National Investment Challenge was rapidly approaching. The final stage of this brutal competition could put a cool $1 million account directly under the winner's control. There was no way I was trading crucial prep time for off-key singing and another petty argument over seating arrangements. Of course, by that night, Big Mouth Cody had already broadcasted my karaoke refusal to the entire class group chat. Velvet Cucumber messaged me again, so, you chose the big competition over hanging out with Victoria? I simply replied, I chose the competition. Her response, close enough. The very next afternoon, a frantic emergency text from Kayla dragged me rushing into a busy restaurant, only to find Renee's slender wrist locked tightly in some random stranger's massive hand. 3 women had just been quietly eating near the back, but now, a nasty group of huge guys was completely blocking their only exit. One loud, obnoxious punk was holding Renee captive, actually laughing, as she furiously ordered him to let go. My blood boiled. I coldly walked right between the tables and ordered, release her. Now. The guy sneered at my face and purposefully squeezed her wrist even harder. And who the hell are you? He mocked. I stared him dead in the eye and answered softly, your absolute last polite warning. He forcefully shoved Renee aside and instantly swung a heavy fist right at my jaw. Big mistake. I effortlessly read the shift in his shoulder before his fist even moved. My system-upgraded cognition caught the exact angle of attack. And my insanely boosted strength and coordination upgrades? Yeah, they easily handled the rest. I swiftly stepped inside his guard, caught his incoming wrist, brutally locked his elbow, and drove him face-first straight down onto the heavy wooden table, somehow managing not to break anything legally important. His massive friends instantly jumped up. I just twisted his trapped arm 1 single inch. He screamed in absolute agony, begging his boys to sit the hell down. They instantly sat. Renee stood there, quietly rubbing her bruised wrist. Kayla quickly ducked behind me for cover, while Jillian smartly grabbed their bags and made a beeline for the door. I finally released the punk's twisted arm. You're finished, I whispered coldly. He just folded over his throbbing arm and stayed perfectly still, whining in pain. We got the hell out of there before security, angry managers, and amateur lawyers could turn my one clean, badass rescue into an exhausting, all-night legal procedure. Once we were safely outside in the cool air, Renee slowly turned and looked at me. Wait, you actually followed us? I pointed an accusing finger at Kayla. She didn't even flinch. Instead, she just smirked, lifting up her phone to show a text message like it was rock-solid proof of her genius judgment. I shifted my gaze to Renee and hit her with a dry smile. Well, congratulations. You finally got that cliché prince rescues the princess scene you always pretend you don't write. Her face instantly froze. The joke hit way too close to home, striking right at her secret identity. That trope is completely common. Renee snapped, her voice spiking with panic. I just waved her off. Hey, relax, I told her. Your little secret kingdom is perfectly safe with me. Still, she kept a paranoid, burning gaze on me the entire walk back to campus. The very next morning, disaster struck. Professor Madsen caught me breezing through advanced challenge material right in the middle of his lecture. Keep in mind, Madsen wasn't just any finance instructor, he was the heavyweight sponsoring our upcoming competition entry. He marched over and stopped dead beside my desk, wearing that exact, terrifying glare he reserved for cocky students who dared to work ahead of his lessons. Professor Madsen aggressively tapped his finger against my challenge sheet. "Since you've clearly finished my lesson, why don't you get up and teach it?" he challenged. The entire room whipped around to stare at me. Renee crossed her arms, clearly enjoying the show. Meanwhile, my rival Derek flashed a massive, smug smile, finally looking happy after losing his previous bet. Ignoring them, I calmly walked up to the front board. Madsen tried to completely destroy me by assigning the absolute hardest problem from the entire chapter. I solved it without breaking a sweat, then explained the complex decision rule in super plain, easy-to-understand language. Frustrated, he threw a second problem at me. I crushed that one, too. By the time I flawlessly tackled the third equation, Derek's smug little smile had completely vanished. Professor Madsen slowly set down his dry erase marker. "Where exactly did you learn this?" he demanded. I just shrugged. "I read." He stared silently at the advanced challenge material sitting on my desk. "Then keep reading," he said, his tone totally shifting. "I want you on the national investment team." Boom. The elite competition was officially public knowledge. And suddenly, so was the giant, glowing target on my back. Renee let out one sharp, bitter laugh and crossed her arms even tighter against her chest. I looked at him and said, "Professor Madsen, just let me finish the lesson." The second I sat down, half the class practically swarmed my desk begging for help. Kayla immediately took my left side, while Jillian claimed the right. Renee hung back near the aisle, angrily watching every single girl in the room flock to my desk. Even two upper-class guys who used to treat me like total garbage were suddenly begging for my notes. Derek was so mad, he packed up his bag and stormed out early. Later that evening, back in my dorm room, my anonymous author client, Velvet Cucumber, texted me, furiously complaining that some smug man in her class had become utterly impossible to deal with. Little did she know she was complaining to that exact same smug man. I texted back, "Then beat him somewhere he can't joke his way out of. Make this book a massive success." My words must have fired her up, because she sent over a totally revised plot outline within an hour, but then, a second, much weirder message popped up. Velvet Cucumber wrote, "I just can't make the spicy dominant scene feel realistic. I really need a physical reference for the main prop." Sighing, I mentally opened my magical system inventory. A black pet collar was sitting right there in my inventory, looking like a terrible life decision that came with free shipping. Honestly, I always thought this collar was just a stupid, useless bonus item from the system. But boy, was I wrong. By Monday, this little piece of leather would completely humiliate one girl, drag a second innocent woman into a wild rumor, and somehow put a ruthless billionaire father firmly on my side. So, on Sunday night, I boxed up the system pet collar and mailed it to her dorm using my anonymous editor account. Hey, Renee had asked for a physical prop, right? Monday at lunch, Renee brought the unopened package and casually set it right next to Victoria's tray. Now, here's the catch: the collar secretly carried a mild mood and rapport-boosting modifier. It could never actually force an action or magically create consent, but, unfortunately, that magical safety rule did absolutely nothing to hide the highly questionable packaging. Kayla spotted the mysterious box first. The cafeteria was absolutely packed to the brim. Renee, Kayla, Jillian, Victoria, and I were all crammed at one table near the windows. 5 college students, 1 super private package, and 0 self-control. Kayla aggressively tapped the shipping label with her manicured nail. "Ooh, a secret admirer?" she teased. Renee quickly yanked the box closer to her chest. "It's just for research," she lied. Jillian leaned over her iced latte, raising an eyebrow. That vague answer only made things 10 times worse. Victoria shot Renee a highly suspicious glance. "What kind of academic research arrives without a return name?" Victoria asked. Renee's panicked eyes immediately cut toward me. I just kept eating my sandwich. Look, I already knew the box contained pure chaos. I honestly just wanted to sit back and see whether this trouble could survive lunch. Renee nervously reached for the packaging tape, but Kayla moved way faster. Kayla totally snatched the box out of her hands, ripped one side wide open, and aggressively shook it upside down over the table. A kinky black pet collar dropped straight onto Victoria's pristine white napkin. Blink, the heavy metal ring struck the porcelain plate. Everyone at our table heard it loud and clear. And unfortunately, so did all the students sitting right beside us. Kayla slowly lifted the leather collar, dangling between 2 fingers, her jaw dropping. "Renee? Renee went completely ghost white. Put that down right now, she hissed. Jillian picked up the tiny instruction card, and her amused smile instantly vanished. Victoria looked in horror from the shiny metal collar back to Renee. You actually brought this to lunch? Renee frantically grabbed for it, but Kayla held it just out of reach. Who in the world sent you a dog collar? Kayla demanded. Renee practically snapped. I told you, it's just a physical writing reference. 3 nearby students immediately turned around, their eyes wide with juicy gossip. Victoria raised one elegant, deeply judged eyebrow. Wait, you right? Boom. Renee had successfully dodged one embarrassing question, but completely exposed her secret author identity in the process. Panicking, she tried to change direction way too fast. It's just for a class project, Renee desperately insisted. Kayla looked back at the edgy black collar, completely unconvinced. Oh yeah? For which class exactly? Renee's face tightened in absolute horror. Seeing her friend drowning, Jillian jumped in to try and rescue her. Maybe for the theater department? Jillian offered weakly. Victoria reached out and flicked the heavy metal ring. No way, that kind of prop has way better hardware than our school's entire theater budget. The entire table behind us erupted into stifled laughter. Renee locked her desperate, pleading eyes on me. I was literally the only person at the table who knew the real reason this awkward collar existed, but if I explained it, I'd end up exposing her velvet cucumber pen name to the whole school. So, I just looked at the table and said, it's her private mail. Give it back to her. Kayla's smug smile only sharpened like a knife. Oh? And why exactly are you defending her? Kayla challenged. I didn't miss a beat. Because ripping open someone else's private package is honestly just trashy. Kayla's vicious smile instantly vanished. Insulted, she dropped the collar back onto the table. I thought it was just a joke, she muttered. Renee snatched it up like her life depended on it, but the damage was done. A student at the next table loudly whispered Victoria's name. Another student quickly lifted their phone to record the drama. And then, somebody in the crowd audibly asked whether Renee had bought the kinky collar specifically for Victoria. It was crazy. The rumor literally formed right in front of us in real time. Victoria's beautiful expression hardened into solid ice. Keep me totally out of this, she warned. Renee tried to backtrack. I swear, it has absolutely nothing to do with her, Renee pleaded. But of course, that desperate sentence just made half the cafeteria instantly decide it had absolutely everything to do with her. The volcano of a class monitor had finally triggered an eruption she couldn't micromanage. I let out a single, careless laugh. Renee snapped her blazing gaze to me. Crack. She slapped me hard across the face. The entire table froze in dead silence. Her eyes glistened with unshed tears before her hand even dropped back to her side. You think this is some kind of joke? Renee demanded, her voice trembling. My smirk instantly vanished. She violently shoved the leather collar back into its box and stormed out, the terrified students scrambling out of her warpath. Nobody dared to laugh after she disappeared. That twisted package started out as a harmless prank, but Renee's tears just made the price tag way too high. Kayla stared blankly at the tabletop. Victoria forcefully slammed down the phone of the nearest gossiping student. Jillian hurriedly snatched up Renee's abandoned bag and sprinted off to chase her down. I bought 2 ice creams and trailed after them. But before I even reached the courtyard, the purchase activated another ridiculous system reward. Receptiveness, candy acquired. Item effect, lowers a target's hesitation toward a request they are already heavily considering. Limitation, cannot magically create desire, cannot override a hard refusal. A single wrapped piece of candy materialized directly into my inventory. My absurd spending system had just turned a simple ice cream apology into the world's most suspicious power buff. Seriously, even the tutorial boss was drowning in ethics paperwork at this point. I tracked Renee down behind the arts building. Jillian had given her some breathing room and headed back to class. Renee was perched on a low brick wall, her arms crossed tight defensively. I cautiously held out the ice cream. She completely ignored it. I took a seat right next to her. My bad, I admitted. I really should have stopped laughing the second you looked genuinely terrified. Renee kept her eyes glued perfectly forward. Now the entire campus thinks Victoria and I are into freaky dog collars together. I forced my face to stay completely deadpan. Laughing again right now would have been a straight-up death sentence. I gently set the ice cream down next to her. Listen, people will eventually get bored if you just stop feeding them your shame. Renee snapped back, furious. That is so easy for you to say. Nobody out there actually thinks you are secretly hooking up with Victoria. I looked right at her and said, "Give the campus some time to cool off." Her head whipped around to glare at me. I immediately threw both hands up in surrender. Okay, bad timing. Renee angrily snatched up the ice cream and took one aggressive, spiteful bite. I casually held out the wrapped system candy. The ice cream shop tossed this promo in for free. Renee grabbed the promotional candy without a second thought and tore off the wrapper. She swallowed it down without any ceremony. Then I decided to joke, "Honestly, your most flawless power move right now is kicking down the door to Victoria's class and just confessing publicly." Renee hurled her plastic spoon straight at my chest. Take that. Well, it seemed the system's hard refusal clause was still fully operational. I effortlessly caught the spoon midair. Alright, fine, here is the serious answer. You need to pick the version of the story you can actually live with, and then strut around like everyone else is just late to the party. Renee looked down at her rapidly melting cup as I pressed on. And for God's sake, stop letting Kayla dictate which messy parts of your life get dragged into the public eye. Renee's jaw locked tight. Instead of staring at the dirt, she finally lifted her intense gaze toward the classroom building. I lightly tapped the infamous collar box sitting right beside her. Hey, you did ask for research earlier. Do you still want my help testing out exactly how this wild scene plays out? Renee stared absolute daggers at me. Test it out with you? I smirked. Wow, you actually sound interested. She aggressively shoved the cardboard box hard against my chest. Absolutely freaking not. Then she shot up from the wall, snatched her ice cream and the collar box, and stormed off, leaving me behind. The candy might have lowered her hesitation, but Renee's refusal was still crystal clear. Later that night in our dorm, Cody practically shoved a viral campus video clip right into my face. The resident gossip broadcaster looked like she had just achieved pure spiritual enlightenment. Bro, your class monitor literally chose violence today, Cody announced with absolute glee. The chaotic video started right in the middle of Victoria's prestigious international relations lecture. Renee boldly marched straight through the classroom doors while the shocked professor was still mid-lecture. She strutted right over to Victoria. Every smartphone in the room shot up just before Renee firmly grabbed Victoria around the waist and spun them both toward the captive audience. Renee boldly declared, "Since everyone has already made up their minds, Victoria and I are officially together." Victoria frantically tried to pry the girl's arm off. "Renee, unhand me this instant." Renee just locked the hug in even tighter. Then, with a dramatic flair, she held up that cursed collar box. "We will be doing some intense research with this gift tonight," she announced proudly. The entire student body shot to their feet, lifting their camera phones even higher. The professor choked on his own words. Victoria's icy expression instantly shifted from totally cold to lethally dangerous. Renee flashed a brilliant smile, acting like public humiliation had just become a premium shared subscription. Cody eagerly tapped the screen to replay the madness. I had to stop him before he looped it for a third time. Renee had actually taken my sarcastic, stupid joke and completely weaponized it. Man, the volcano of a class monitor hadn't just exploded, she had chosen straight-up arson. 10 minutes later, Velvet Cucumber sent me a frantic private message. She wrote, "Kayla intentionally opened that package in public because she desperately wants Calvin for herself. She completely set me up to be humiliated." I had quietly suspected Kayla all along, but Renee had just put her on blast out loud for everyone to hear. I quickly typed back, "Then you need to make sure anyone who repeats that garbage rumor pays a massive social price." Velvet Cucumber responded, "Some jerk in my class is using the rumor to aggressively challenge my position as monitor. I sent my master plan, let the idiot call you unfit in front of the entire class. Then, casually ask him why on earth he saved and reposted a private clip of 2 girls. Make that creep explain his weird obsession out loud to everyone." Bright and early the next morning, Renee cornered me right outside the lecture hall. "I am officially using your move today," she warned me. "If this whole thing blows up in my face, it is entirely your fault." Exactly 10 minutes later, Renee dropped the bomb. Her arrogant class rival stood up and loudly called Renee totally unfit to lead, claiming she had willingly turned herself into cheap campus gossip. Renee just smirked and asked him exactly why he had eagerly saved and reposted that private video clip. The entire room erupted into brutal laughter at his expense. He sat down in utter defeat. Not a single person dared to repeat his challenge. Later that night, Velvet Cucumber messaged asking how to make Calvin realize she actually liked men. I replied, "Invite him somewhere totally private before he completely assumes Victoria has already won you over." She quickly wrote back, "I am going to use an escape room. I can easily pretend to get super scared and cling to him." I just sat there, staring blankly at the glowing message. Renee had literally just laid out her entire master plan directly to the very guy she was planning to use it on. My crazy second life just kept handing me these ridiculous, overpowered advantages. No halfway decent person should be allowed to enjoy this much unbridled power. Bright and early Saturday morning, Renee tracked me down on the campus track and aggressively dragged me downtown. She had curled her hair and slipped into a tight red top. She looked good, annoyingly good. I crossed my arms and asked, "Where is Victoria?" Renee's eyes narrowed into a fierce glare. Why would Victoria come? I gave her a deadpan look. Because you two just announced you were dating in front of 40 witnesses. Renee just hooked her arm through mine, totally unbothered. Today is all about you, she purred. A normal guy would have gotten the hint by now. I possessed upgraded cognition, yet here I was, willingly choosing chaos. Our date was an escape room set inside a creepy, fake abandoned workshop. Renee spent the first 10 minutes acting like the spooky props totally bored her. But every single time the lights flickered, she conveniently brushed up against my arm. I leaned in and whispered, "Your fear has excellent timing." Renee shot back, "And your ego needs its own entry ticket." Right on cue, the main lights completely died. A chainsaw engine roared to life right behind us. Renee's cool girl act vanished in an instant. She grabbed my shirt with both hands and practically climbed onto my back to hide. The masked actor charged out of the pitch-black darkness, straight for us. I spun around, shielded Renee with my own body, and hustled us through the next door before she could literally rip my sleeve off. The actor stopped at the room's edge, but Renee did not let go. I looked down at her, still playing along. Renee quickly let go of my shirt. "I was protecting you," she claimed. I raised an eyebrow. "Oh, really? From right behind my spine?" She punched me right in the shoulder. After we finally escaped the last room, Renee froze on the sidewalk, staring down at her feet. "I need people to see me with a guy," she muttered. My mind immediately jumped to the worst conclusion. "So, what, I am just your emergency prop?" I asked, my voice hardening. Renee snapped her head up. "No, that is not what I cut her off right there. Go find someone else who actually wants that job." And with that, I walked away. Sure, I had outsmarted financial markets, crushed a rich bully, and managed a secret author account. But the second a proud woman awkwardly tried to confess her feelings, I folded like a cheap lawn chair. Renee called Victoria before I even made it back to campus. I only found out because Victoria texted me exactly 40 minutes later. Victoria demanded, "What on earth did you do to Renee?" I quickly typed back, "I misunderstood a sentence." Victoria replied, "Want to talk about it over an impressive dinner?" I turned her down flat. The massive finance challenge was approaching fast. She asked me out again 3 days later, and I rejected her again. By the third invitation, Victoria sent just one single line, "Renee says you walked out on her. Come explain yourself right now." 2 weeks later, I finally met Victoria at a high-end Japanese restaurant downtown. She walked in wearing a stunning cream dress, looking so expensive that the menu itself should have apologized to her. "I noticed you staring," she smirked. Well, my pettiness had never ruined my eyesight. Victoria took the seat across from me. "You rejected me twice," she pointed out. "I was busy," I replied coolly. Victoria just lifted her phone. "Smile for the camera." I absolutely did not smile. She snapped the picture anyway. The photo captured my hand, her elegant dress, and our 2 plates. Her social media post went live before the waiter even came back. She made sure to tag the restaurant. The caption read, "Finally, a quiet dinner." I instantly knew that petty caption was a direct shot at Renee. Sure enough, Renee stormed into the restaurant 12 minutes later. She marched straight over to our table, wrapped both of her arms tightly around Victoria, and rested her chin right on the heiress's shoulder. Renee dramatically announced, "You started without me." Victoria's fake smile tightened. "I was not aware this was a group reservation," she shot back. Renee squeezed her tighter. "Couples share," she teased. Just like that, my dinner had turned into a toxic custody battle between 2 gorgeous women who were pretending to date each other, just to fight over me. Look, I really need you to grasp just how utterly deranged that whole situation felt. I sat there gripping my chopsticks, but before either woman could escalate the war, a nervous waiter approached. "Miss Whitmore, your father is upstairs dining with your uncle." Victoria froze completely. But before she could even try to hide, her incredibly intimidating father, Randall Whitmore, was already walking down the stairs. Randall controlled the massive Whitmore capital empire. He carried that relaxed, terrifying posture of a billionaire whose phone calls always got answered immediately. He spotted his daughter having dinner with a young man and immediately smiled. But then, Randall noticed Renee practically wrapped around her. The billionaire's smile completely died. Victoria, Randall said with dangerous caution. Who exactly are your friends? Victoria nervously gestured toward me. This is Calvin Archer. He is the top finance student you have been hearing about. Instantly, Randall stepped up and shook my hand with both of his. Ah, the brave young man from the train incident and the star of the investment team, he boomed. It seemed my crazy campus reputation had reached much further than I ever expected. Randall insisted I come upstairs to meet his brother, leaving the two bickering women downstairs. As we walked up, I overheard the uncle complaining about all the high-profile matches Victoria had rejected. The uncle aggressively questioned how Randall could possibly plan to hand over the entire Whitmore capital to her alone. Randall fired back, I need someone highly competent beside her. Someone she will actually listen to. That was all the intel I gathered before stepping into the private room. I calmly greeted the uncle, took a seat when offered, and answered their intense interrogation without once begging for their approval. Randall grilled me on high-level finance. I hit him back with one brutally clear, genius answer about risk and cash flow. Then the uncle probed into my family background. I looked him in the eye and said I had learned to survive and support myself. Impressed, Randall actually poured my tea himself instead of making a waiter do it. But when we finally went back downstairs, I realized Renee and Victoria had somehow made everything 10 times worse. Renee was still clutching Victoria's arm like a lifeline. But Victoria had stopped trying to pull away and had fully started retaliating. Victoria looked right at Randall and smirked. Renee just really loves her accessories. Renee smiled sweetly, firing back, and Victoria just loves pretending she is in charge. Randall's whiskey glass froze halfway to his mouth. His brother looked at me like I was a rescue worker who had just boldly walked right into a nuclear disaster zone. To make it worse, Renee happily added, "We will just use the gift together." Randall literally choked, nearly inhaling his drink, as Victoria casually patted her father's back. "Dad, remember to breathe," she mocked gently. Red-faced, Randall looked wildly from Victoria to Renee, and finally landed his desperate gaze on me. He reached out and gripped my shoulder like his life depended on it. "Calvin, all three of you are coming to dinner at our home." Victoria frowned, her voice dripping with disdain. "Why him?" Randall just kept his heavy hand planted firmly on my shoulder. "Because I invited him." Renee finally let go of Victoria. The whole crazy rumor had sparked from a single grabbed collar in a crowded cafeteria. By the time I walked out of that dinner, a literal billionaire father was treating me like his ultimate emergency fix. Randall Whitmore's unexpected invitation had just evolved a petty cafeteria rumor into full-blown campus politics. The night after Randall dropped that bomb, Cody warned me that one of Victoria's wealthiest, most obsessed admirers was digging around, asking exactly who I was. Dominic Harrow. He came from old, dirty money and treated Victoria's attention like it was his own inherited property. The arrogant legacy peacock had caught wind that her dad invited me over. Now, he wanted a full file on me. Cody flopped heavily onto my bed. "Dominic asked if you're actually loaded," he said. I glanced up from my scribbled investment challenge notes. "And what did you tell him?" Cody flashed a wicked grin. "I told him you own a hammer." Jordan, my endlessly cautious roommate, peeked up from his quiet desk. "Dominic doesn't just ask casual questions. He sends his lapdogs out until somebody feeds him the exact answer he wants," Cody added. "He also wanted to know if Victoria sat next to you on purpose." I snapped my notebook shut. "What did you say to that?" Cody's smile stretched even wider. "I said she physically moved Renee's leftovers first." This guy, the ultimate gossip broadcaster, had just answered a simple status check with absolute romantic arson. Perfect. My public financial status had officially hit the Stone Age. Dominic's endless family wealth basically bought him blind social obedience. Guys gave up their seats for him. Elite clubs rushed to return his calls. But that same week, I watched Victoria breeze right past him in the student center without even slowing down. I figured he absolutely hated being the only filthy rich guy she treated like a piece of furniture wearing a Rolex. That kind of bruised ego usually led to a massive, public mistake. Later that night, my publishing dashboard flashed another sweet payout from the web novel. I wired Renee her half through my anonymous account. The user, Velvet Cucumber, immediately replied, "I need more money." I typed back, "Why? New laptop?" She wrote, "Some insanely wealthy woman is competing for the guy I like." That message just burned on my screen while the real Renee sat studying just 3 desks away. I hit reply. "Compete with pure achievement and your appearance." Real money notices both of those things. She quickly sent, "Which one matters more?" I typed back, "Achievement is what keeps him. But a killer dress makes your rival panic first." Velvet Cucumber hit send again, "But what if the rich girl already looks way better?" I stared at the screen and replied, "Then earn enough cash to stop measuring yourself with her damn ruler." The typing bubbles appeared, vanished, and then popped up again. She finally wrote, "You make everything sound so unbelievably easy." I instantly answered, "No, I just make making excuses sound way too expensive." Across the room, Renee glanced up from her phone and caught me smirking. The fiery class monitor narrowed her sharp eyes. Good, my anonymous account had just handed Renee a battle plan. From across the quiet room, the real-life Renee kept watching me right over the edge of her phone. Monday morning rolled around, and Professor Madsen, our ruthless finance professor, scrawled National Investment Challenge across the whiteboard. This brutal challenge had 3 strict stages: basic test accounts, massive corporate accounts, and finally, a ruthless public national ranking. Professor Madsen aggressively capped his marker. The absolute top result gets their hands on the $1 million final account. The entire class erupted into furious whispers. Renee shot her hand up. "Can students make side wagers?" Professor Madsen took one look at me and let out a heavy sigh before she even finished speaking. "I am absolutely not enforcing your personal nonsense," he warned her flatly. Undeterred, Renee stood right up and faced my desk. "You keep acting like you can easily crush everyone," she challenged. I shot back, "Only the people volunteering to lose." A few guys chuckled nervously. Renee stepped closer. Renee laid out her trap. "I get a 20% head start because you joined the class late." I just nodded slowly. "And what happens when you completely waste it?" Her smile grew dangerously sharp. "If I win, you don't date a single person for the entire rest of college." Suddenly, every single guy in the room became deeply invested in the concept of female empowerment. One excited classmate yelled, "Take the deal, man." Another guy started literally calculating the odds of 4 full years of reduced campus competition. I stared dead into Renee's eyes. "You really want 4 years of total control over me?" Renee smugly folded her arms. "Are you scared?" I scoffed, "That is a very expensive question. What exactly do I get if I win?" She paused, actually considering it. Finally, Renee answered, "One absolute, unconditional forgiveness. You can do one terrible thing, and I will forgive it completely without even asking why." That reward had some suspiciously dangerous, broad applications. I slowly held out my hand. A 20% lead, 4 years of control, versus 1 blind forgiveness. Deal. Renee shook my hand firmly. Then, she snatched Professor Madsen's marker and wrote our exact terms right on the corner of the whiteboard. Renee gets a 20% advantage. If Calvin loses, no dating until graduation. If Renee loses, 1 unconditional forgiveness. Half the class whipped out their phones and photographed the board before Professor Madsen could even think about erasing it. The casual bet stopped being playful, flirting the exact second 50 witnesses saved those terms to their camera rolls. Professor Madsen just stared at our still shaking hands. "You two somehow turned a simple portfolio management class into a toxic custody dispute," he muttered. I just told him that high stakes drastically improve student attention spans. He turned and walked away before we could drag him any deeper into the mess. The room immediately split into factions. A bunch of guys loudly supported Renee, solely because my dating ban heavily benefited their own love lives. You really learn how principled men become when another guy's dating life is suddenly on the chopping block. But Kayla supported me loudly enough to make Renee regret the whole wager before the trading bell even rang. Later that afternoon, Kayla cornered me right after class near the main campus gate. She wore a much softer, vulnerable expression, holding up 2 amusement park tickets. Kayla smiled gently and offered, "We can go this Saturday." "No pressure at all. I can wait until you're fully ready." I just stared at her. In my previous, miserable first life, that exact patient smile was the trap that kept me blindly buying her expensive gifts for months on end. This time, the real show started right after she caught sight of the laptop, heard the rumors about the condo, and saw 3 other women circling me like sharks. I handed back 1 ticket. "I'm training on Saturday," I told her. Kayla gently touched my sleeve. "Next week, then?" she asked softly. "I'll still be busy," I shot back coldly. Defeated, Kayla tucked both tickets right back into her bag. "I'm patient," she murmured. The ultimate gold digger with a calculator for a heart had finally become the one desperately waiting on me. I just stepped away. Good luck with that holding period, I thought. But instead of folding, she just smiled. How the tables turn. The exact same woman who once kept me waiting in the cold now stood at the gate holding 2 unused tickets. Man, that felt incredibly good. But it also meant these women were officially starting to compete tooth and nail just to get a single slot in my schedule. 3 days later, the tension in the computer lab was thick enough to cut with a knife. Every student fired up the exact same test account. The first round? It had one very simple rule. Grow the account before Friday's cutoff, while most of these rookies panicked and spread their virtual money across 6 or 7 different stocks. I slammed every single dollar into one completely neglected logistics company. The allocation bar instantly hit 100%. A classmate right behind me actually laughed out loud. Diversification exists for a reason, buddy, I told him without looking back. But so does knowing exactly when to sell. Right then, Professor Matson stopped dead beside my screen. Why on earth would you pick that company? He asked. I just pointed straight at the chart. Orders are climbing. Blind panic crushed the price, but it rebounds before Friday. Sure, the orders and price were visible to anyone. But that Friday rebound? That little secret came straight from my past life's memory. Suddenly, Renee leaned over from the very next terminal. You bet all of it? She asked, eyes wide. Every last dollar, I replied smoothly. Naturally, the stock dipped hard right before lunch. That same loudmouth classmate behind me announced my loss loud enough for the entire room to hear. Looks like our resident genius is already bleeding cash, he mocked. I just smirked and left the position completely untouched, even as Professor Madsen nervously watched my screen. Renee, however, just intensely watched my face. Meanwhile, the desperate guys praying for my dating ban started wildly celebrating a result that hadn't even finished moving yet. But by the very next morning, the price completely recovered. Right before the cutoff, buyers absolutely flooded in, and that chart climbed like a rocket. Funny how that same loudmouth classmate suddenly stopped narrating my account. Renee silently studied the chart, then boldly bought the exact same stock using most of her own account. The whole class groaned in protest, but Renee just flashed a wicked smile. You never said copying was banned, she chimed. And she was right, the rules never actually forbade it. She had shamelessly stolen my move, but brilliantly kept just enough cash in reserve to protect herself. She was smart, incredibly annoying, and attractive in the absolute worst possible way. Later at lunch, Victoria waved me over toward a table, but there was a catch. The notoriously rich Dominic Harrow was already seated right next to her. Dominic casually wore a watch that could have easily paid my entire old annual salary. He gave my cheap shirt a look of pure disgust, then glared at the empty chair before I even sat down. Victoria happily gestured to the empty chair. Calvin, sit, she offered. Dominic scoffed, so. This is the little stock student? I sat down coolly and fired back. And you must be the creepy admirer conducting background checks. Victoria quickly took a sip of her drink, just to hide her amused smile, while Dominic stiffly leaned back in his chair. I'm just making sure Victoria isn't wasting her precious time on some lucky freshman, he sneered. I raised an eyebrow. Oh, does she usually require your royal approval? Dominic instantly glared at Victoria. People around her, he warned, should really understand the vast difference between getting her attention and getting actual access. Ah, there it was. Pure, unadulterated class contempt, wrapped up in expensive cologne. Victoria nervously glanced at me. Are you worried about the upcoming ranking? She asked. Without missing a beat, I reached right over and casually patted the top of her head. Relax, I told her softly. Your little guest here is clearly doing enough worrying for the both of us. Victoria completely froze under my hand. Dominic's silver fork stopped dead, halfway to his mouth. The entire table instantly understood the silent, aggressive challenge before a single word was even spoken. Victoria slowly, carefully removed my hand. You're reckless, she whispered. Well, you're the one who invited an audience, I shot back. Dominic's face hardened into pure rage. Don't ever touch her like that again, he snarled. But Victoria sharply turned toward him. I am perfectly capable of speaking for myself, Dominic. Boom. The legacy peacock had strutted in to protect his so-called territory, only to get instantly shut down. Victoria absolutely stripped away all of his authority in one single sentence. I calmly finished my lunch, while Dominic sat there seething in total silence as Victoria happily kept talking to me. By Friday, the highly anticipated provisional national rankings filled the massive lecture hall screen. The room held its breath as Professor Madsen enlarged the top 10. And there it was, my name, sitting pretty at number 7. For 3 agonizing seconds, nobody spoke. Then, the room absolutely exploded. Kayla immediately grabbed my shoulder in shock. Jillian practically shouted my name across the room. Meanwhile, the pathetic guys who had backed Renee frantically started checking if their stupid dating ban had an appeal process. Professor Madsen tapped the screen, his voice booming. 7th nationally. This is officially the best provisional rank this campus has ever posted in its history. Renee, however, just stayed quietly seated. I glanced over at her account on the class leaderboard. She had flawlessly copied my stock, sold right near the peak, and brilliantly preserved enough cash to completely avoid the late drop. Even after using her 20% advantage, she now sat just 1.2% behind me. Renee confidently strutted up to the screen, snatched Professor Madsen's marker, and boldly circled both of our returns. Only 1.2%, she challenged, staring right at me. I'm absolutely taking the lead in the next round. I just leaned back, completely unfazed. You'll have to catch me first, sweetheart. Seeing her score, the exact same men who had celebrated my early dip suddenly stopped treating Renee like she was just some joke. Instantly, half the class flocked closer to her screen begging for explanations, while the other half faithfully crowded around mine. This insane bet had basically split the room into two warring camps, setting off a very public countdown. Renee locked eyes with me. You still haven't earned that forgiveness, she taunted, and you still haven't earned my celibacy, I fired right back. Jillian practically choked on her drink. Renee actually cracked a smile despite herself. Yeah, Renee was staying seriously dangerous, but that was good. A weak, boring rival would have totally killed the thrill of the bet after just one measly round. After the massive lecture hall finally emptied, Victoria suddenly appeared outside with Dominic angrily trailing just a few steps behind her. She looked at the ranking number twice, totally stunned. You're really 7th? Victoria asked, breathless. I just smirked. Well, the screen seems pretty damn confident about it. She stepped up to walk right beside me, completely speechless. Confused and annoyed, Dominic immediately demanded to know where they were going. But Victoria didn't even slow down. I'm going to congratulate the one person here who actually earned something today, she threw over her shoulder, leaving him completely in the dust. The legacy peacock froze in the hallway as Victoria walked away with me. My background check was officially complete. By that afternoon, my face and provisional rank were plastered across screens and posters all over Crestview State. Somebody had taken a simple first-round result and turned it into a massive, campus-wide spectacle. One poster hyped me up as the campus's absolute best shot at a national finish. Another literally blew up my student ID photo across an entire brick wall. I figured whoever orchestrated this wanted to hit me with max pressure and pure embarrassment all at once. Seriously, petty work. Still, I had to respect the hustle. Random students were stopping me for photos. Bitter guys brushed off my rank as a temporary fluke, while girls who had never even looked my way were suddenly desperate for my investing advice. Some arrogant senior outside the cafeteria actually yelled that 7th place was just a glorified participation trophy. 2 minutes later, his own girlfriend walked up and asked me which stock I was buying. He shut up real fast. Look, 7th place was provisional, but the campus still turned every single hallway into a public test. I ended up tracing the poster request through a department email that Professor Madsen let me see. The request had been pushed through a school board contact directly tied to the Whitmore family. I instantly suspected Victoria, but I waited for her to admit it. Barely an hour after those posters went up, the department director personally marched right into my dorm room. Cody panicked and almost hid the hammer. The director offered me everything: a private study room, full travel support, VIP access to the main campus research materials, and an exclusive interview slot with the national organizers. He even ordered Professor Madsen to completely clear my schedule before the challenge deadlines. The exact same campus that had barely scraped together a dorm room for me was now rearranging entire classes around my portfolio. Cody quickly shoved his dirty laundry off our one good chair just before the director sat down. Jordan quietly slid the hammer drawer shut. Right while the director was standing next to my bed, my phone rang. It was Victoria. She asked with a smirk in her voice, "Are you enjoying all the attention?" I put her straight on speakerphone. "The department just handed me a private room and a travel budget," I answered calmly. "You can thank your board contact for that." Dead silence. Then, Victoria finally confessed, "I just wanted to see if the pressure would make you crack." I glanced over at the director, Cody, and Jordan. "Well, it just made them fund me," I told her. Cody had to slap a hand over his mouth to hide his laugh. Victoria immediately hung up. The spoiled heiress thought she was tightening the leash with public pressure. Instead, she had just given me a massive promotion. What a beautiful mistake. Later that night, 2 explosive messages hit my phone within 60 seconds of each other. Eliza texted me first. She wrote, "I am coming up this Saturday with Aubrey Sinclair, my college roommate. I really want to see you." The untouchable school goddess from my past life was actually coming to my campus. Right after that, Victoria messaged, "My parents want the new finance prodigy at dinner. Do not make me ask you 3 times again." This was insane. The woman I had once wanted more than anything was coming, right as these other girls were already fighting over me. Meanwhile, Victoria's elite family had decided that my new ranking earned me a seat at their table. On Friday night, she finally called to explain the real reason her parents wanted this dinner. Randall's personal stock account had just taken a massive, heavy loss. He wanted the nationally ranked freshman prodigy to fix it for him. Oh, and Victoria's mother, Diane Whitmore, had insisted that Victoria bring another classmate along. That family invitation came loaded with old money, blatant matchmaking, and one incredibly annoyed heiress. On the flip side, my roommate Jordan had gone home on Friday just to escort his sister and her roommate back to Crestview. I knew all about his weekend trip. What I absolutely did not know was that his sister was Eliza. Saturday afternoon rolled around. Eliza stepped off the train with Aubrey Sinclair, staring wide-eyed at the new face the system had rebuilt for me. Aubrey was her college roommate. Aubrey casually mentioned she only came to support Eliza, and to see for herself if my campus posters were lying. Eliza stopped barely 3 feet away from me. "Calvin?" she asked softly. I smiled, but kept it careful. That missing tooth of mine still punished any wild enthusiasm. She literally walked a full circle around me. "Did you get taller?" I just shrugged and told her, Rhett's family generously funded my research and development. Her eyes immediately narrowed at the gap in my teeth. "You are seriously still making that joke?" she sighed. I smirked. "Hey, I paid for the lifetime rights to it." Aubrey looked me up and down, flashing an approving smile. "Well, the poster definitely did not mention the smart mouth," Aubrey teased. Eliza shot her a sharp, warning look, but Aubrey just threw both hands up in defense. "Hey, I am just observing." The quiet wild card had excellent comedic timing. But then, Jordan Keller stepped off that exact same train, lugging Eliza's second bag. Jordan, my overly cautious roommate. Suddenly, his little family errand made perfect, horrifying sense. I stared dead at him. He stared right back. Eliza just looked back and forth between us. "Wait, you two already know each other?" "Jordan is my brother," Eliza said. Jordan awkwardly adjusted the heavy bag on his shoulder. "He literally sleeps in the bed across from mine." I immediately pointed a finger at him. "You never once mentioned that the school goddess was your sister." Jordan's face visibly tightened. "And you never mentioned that you go around calling my sister a goddess," he fired back. Aubrey burst out laughing, while Eliza buried her face in her hands. Jordan leaned in close to me. "I have heard all the wild campus stories about you," he warned. I raised an eyebrow. "Which one?" Jordan scoffed. "All of them." He started counting them off on his fingers. "The hammer incident, the women chasing you, the hospital money, and now these massive posters." I glanced over at Eliza. "Wait, you told him about the train attack?" Eliza nodded. "Of course I did. He actually called the hospital before I even could." Jordan had been the one calling the hospital right after Rhett had attacked me. And now? Now the guy lived 3 feet away from my trusty hammer, inspecting me like I was just another massive problem waiting to happen. The universe really had a sick sense of administrative comedy. Jordan purposely raised his voice, so Eliza and Aubrey could hear him clearly. "Looks like my future brother-in-law has been keeping real busy." Eliza turned bright red and slapped his arm, which only made Aubrey laugh even harder. The reluctant brother-in-law had officially entered the chat. And just like that, any hope for a peaceful weekend died right there on the train platform. I brought Eliza and Aubrey to campus, while Jordan played pack mule with the bags, glaring daggers at any guy who dared to look my way. The university's massive posters handled my grand introduction before I even had to speak. Aubrey stopped dead in her tracks in front of one. "7th in the nation." Eliza read the ranking aloud, her eyes darting straight to me. "You have changed a lot," she whispered. Her tone was completely free of judgment, which honestly just made the words hit so much harder. I just told her I was trying my best. Over at the student lounge, a massive crowd was swarming under my shiny new ranking poster. Suddenly, some clumsy classmate backing up with a tray full of drinks slammed right into Eliza. She stumbled hard, falling sideways and landing perfectly across my lap. I wrapped my hands around her waist, catching her just before she hit the floor. For one breathless second, my old high school goddess was sitting right on the lap of the guy who used to be her ultimate doormat, with half the lounge staring. Look, the whole thing was totally an accident, but man, I still appreciated the view. Eliza was just starting to stand up, when Kayla decided to push her way through the crowd of poster gazers. The ruthless gold digger stopped right at our table, her eyes zeroing in on my hands, still wrapped tightly around Eliza's waist. "Who the hell is she?" Kayla demanded. Eliza shot up in a flash. "Eliza Sutton. Calvin and I went to high school together." Kayla narrowed her eyes at me. "Your ex?" she snapped. "No," Eliza corrected smoothly. "He just had a huge crush on me." Aubrey took a slow, deliberate sip of her drink, settling in for a front row seat to this absolute train wreck. Eliza rested her hand lightly on the back of the chair next to me. "Calvin and I were never an item." Kayla crossed her arms. "Did he ever ask you out?" Eliza just stared at me. "Several times," Eliza admitted. Honestly, his flirting technique needed serious medical attention. Aubrey burst out laughing, and I just took the hit. The old me totally deserved that burn. Kayla flashed a fake, overly bright smile. Past tense, right? But before Eliza could fire back, Renee came marching right into the lounge. Renee locked eyes with Eliza, then Kayla, and finally the giant poster looming over my shoulder. Her face hardened instantly. The fiery class monitor pulled out a chair and sat down without even asking. "Who is the guest?" Renee asked coldly. Kayla was quick to strike. "Oh, just Calvin's first love." Eliza shut that down immediately. "First crush," Eliza corrected. Renee slowly looked Eliza up and down, dropping her gaze for a split second before snapping it back up. "So this is the famous school goddess?" Renee smirked. "I guess Calvin's memories gave you way more curves than you actually have." Eliza's polite smile completely vanished, while Kayla looked like it was Christmas morning. Aubrey put her drink down with a loud thud. The entire lounge got deadly quiet, every single eye locked on us. Renee had just made this incredibly personal, and super public. It was time to play my trump card. I dropped a direct quote from the secret, unpublished chapter Renee had shared through her anonymous Velvet Cucumber author account. "That is enough," I growled at Renee. "If you need to insult her body to feel superior, you are already losing." Renee completely froze. Her face drained of all color, then instantly flushed bright red. The utter panic in her eyes told me everything. She recognized her own secret words. Literally no one outside her private author account should have ever known that exact phrase. Eliza kept her eyes locked on Renee instead of me. Renee suddenly stared down at her shoes. "That was totally out of line, Eliza. I am so sorry." That sudden apology shocked Kayla way more than the actual insult did. Renee Chandler, apologizing in public? The ruthless class monitor literally never said sorry to anyone. The tension in the entire room completely shifted as students sat up straight. Kayla lost the dramatic catfight she was so desperate to see, and Aubrey finally loosened her death grip on her plastic cup. Eliza had just dominated the entire room without even raising her voice. Eliza gave one single nod. Apology accepted. Renee quickly stood up, her furious eyes burning into mine. "I need to have a word with you later," she warned in a low hiss. I just smirked right back. "Get in line." Kayla frantically tapped her nails on the table. "Wait, there is a line?" Aubrey totally broke, stifling a massive laugh behind her hand. The chaotic showdown finally fizzled out before a single drink got thrown in anyone's face. Kayla stormed off, her phone already out to start spilling the tea. Renee marched out, glaring holes into the back of my head. Aubrey dragged Jordan away for a campus tour, leaving Eliza and I to slip away toward the peaceful garden behind the library. The heavy campus noise faded out. She stopped right by an old wooden bench and looked me straight in the eyes. "I really liked you on that train," Eliza confessed softly. I stayed dead silent as she kept going. "You were completely broken, but you still cared about what Rhett was doing to all the others. My dad saw it in you, too." Her knuckles turned white as she gripped her bag strap tightly. "I am honestly willing to try this with you, for real," Eliza told me. "We can finish our degrees, grow together as a team, get married when the time is right, and build a truly stable life together." She was offering me the exact future I used to literally beg for in my past life. And notice how cold, hard cash was never even mentioned. I kept my mouth tightly shut, cracking a sarcastic joke now would absolutely ruin the moment. "You were the absolute goddess of my dreams for years," I admitted softly. "And a huge part of my soul still craves that exact future." Eliza just stood there, waiting for the catch. I forced the ugly truth out of my chest. But right now? I am fiercely chasing money, raw power, and brutal payback. I am actively lying to the people I genuinely care about. I cannot promise you some perfect, clean life while I am still choosing to fight this dirty war. Eliza's eyes totally lit up. Refusing to look away, she stepped right into my space. You do not have to be a finished masterpiece yet, just let me stand by your side while you build your empire. Man, that desperate offer hit me way harder than any cheesy love confession ever could. She saw my dark, twisted ambition and still chose to stay. Then look me in the eye and tell me you do not want me, she challenged. I totally broke. I want you, I confessed, but I am just not ready to gamble with your entire future. Eliza nodded slowly, holding back her tears. Just do not make me wait forever, Calvin. I reached out to grab her hand, but pulled away at the last second. She turned and walked back toward Aubrey, leaving my hand hanging in the empty air. I was the idiot who begged for time, and now she was perfectly free to spend that time wherever she wanted. Later that evening, my phone buzzed with a text from Renee while I was busy picking up some fruit for the big Whitmore dinner. Her message read, "Where the hell did you hear that exact line?" I typed back, "It was just a really good quote." A second later, she replied, "That does not answer my question." I shoved my phone into my pocket just as Renee herself marched right into the grocery store. Typical Renee, she had somehow managed to crash the dinner party as the second guest before Victoria could even say a single word. She took one disgusted look at my cheap little fruit basket. "Are you seriously bringing that garbage to a house full of actual billionaires?" She scoffed. I just held up a single orange with a massive grin. "Hey, do not judge, this exact fruit has a highly successful combat record. Honestly, a bloody tooth receipt and a single grocery store orange had basically become my absolute cheapest, most effective tactical assets." Rolling her eyes, Renee violently swapped my orange for an outrageously expensive gift box. "Try not to embarrass me," I told her, eyeing her fitted black dress. "Though it looks like you came fully prepared to handle the embarrassment yourself." Renee's mouth curved into a smirk. "So, you noticed. I've got 20/20 vision now," I fired back. She stepped a little closer. "Do you honestly think Victoria is prettier?" she asked. I didn't hesitate. "She's got that rich girl beauty, everything about her looks professionally funded." Renee's smirk vanished. I leaned in and added, "But you look absolutely dangerous when you stop asking for approval." That earned a slow, wicked smile. Renee trailed her fingers over the fruit box, fully leaning into her dominant persona. "What's on your mind?" I asked. "You act like you understand women who crave control," she murmured. I closed the distance between us. "No, I understand women who constantly challenge a man, simply because asking nicely would leave them too vulnerable." Renee locked eyes with me, holding my gaze for a long second, before tossing another orange into the basket. "Call it customer loyalty," she whispered. The fiery class monitor had literally stolen my own line. Honestly, I respected the absolute hustle. Later that evening, Renee and I hauled that same fruit into the massive Whitmore mansion. Victoria's parents had summoned us for dinner, and her mother, Diane, was already waiting in the grand entryway. Diane was polite, completely composed, and incredibly observant. She caught every single sideways glance long before her husband, Randall, even finished saying hello. Randall gripped my shoulder a little too tightly. "Ah, the finance prodigy made it." Just then, Victoria glided down the staircase. "He actually has a name, Dad," she snapped. Randall just waved us toward the dining room. "Then sit next to Calvin and use it." Victoria's eyes instantly narrowed. Diane smoothly maneuvered Renee to the opposite side of the table, trapping me right between Victoria and Randall. Nobody warned me this was an ambush. The seating arrangement made the aggressive matchmaking painfully obvious. Dinner started off politely enough, but that polite illusion shattered after exactly one glass of wine. Randall immediately brought up my national ranking. I calmly explained my current standing, pointing out the risk of treating a single round like the championship. Diane didn't miss a beat. "Are you seeing anyone, Calvin?" Victoria answered before I could even open my mouth. "He collects misunderstandings." Renee smirked and raised her glass. "And women." I just looked back and forth between the two of them. "Look, I brought fruit," I sighed. "You two brought straight-up accusations." Randall laughed way too loud, while Diane quietly studied Victoria's reaction. Diane turned her interrogation to Renee, asking how she knew me. "Oh, he's just an incredibly irritating classmate," Renee shot back. Victoria instantly corrected her. "No, he's an irritating investment risk." Randall just beamed at both of them, acting like he had just heard 2 glowing letters of recommendation. You can probably guess where this disaster was heading. The second glass of wine completely deleted their restraint and hand-eye coordination. Renee totally missed her coaster twice, before finally slamming her glass down. Victoria giggled a little too hard, aggressively stole Renee's water glass, and nearly knocked her own fork onto the floor in the process. Diane smoothly slid the wine bottle out of reach. Randall wisely switched to water. Then, Renee pointed her fork like a weapon straight at Victoria. Your dad clearly thinks Calvin can tame you, Victoria sneered, leaning in. Renee didn't flinch. And the whole class thinks a dog collar is what tamed you. Men just love pretending they're holding the leash, Victoria smirked. At least, until somebody brings out the candles. Right on cue, Diane silently moved the decorative candles over to the sideboard. Randall chugged his water, staring at me like I was his designated emergency contact. Hey, I warned the girls, you are literally discussing romance novel fetishes right in front of the parents. Renee drunkenly pointed at me. He is way worse than the guys in those novels. Victoria vigorously nodded. He literally charges interest on compliments. Diane slowly turned her cold gaze to me. Well, do you? Only when they pay late, I answered with a straight face. Victoria's mouth twitched, trying not to laugh. Renee tried to kick my shin under the table and entirely missed. Randall just stared at me. Calvin. Are they always like this? He asked helplessly. I sighed. Honestly, I'm getting the premium package tonight. That actually earned a rare, genuine laugh from Diane. Renee held up her empty glass. And we haven't even gotten to the part about the whips. Randall violently choked on his water. Diane slowly closed her eyes for one long second, took a deep breath, and then looked at me like this absolute circus was now my responsibility. The second dinner ended, Randall dragged me into his private study while Diane wrangled the drunk girls downstairs. The man had consumed just enough alcohol to skip the pleasantries and get straight to the point. Calvin, I want you to become my son-in-law, Randall demanded. I just stared at him in shock. He opened his desk drawer, pulled out a check for $500,000, and slammed it onto the table. Consider this a management advance, Randall explained, his voice dead serious. The core investment principal remains ours. But you will receive a heavily agreed-upon share of the profits. The massive check sat right between us. Randall studied my reaction for a second before sliding it even closer. Manage the account. Take care of Victoria, and just let the rest develop naturally. Meanwhile, right outside the study door, Victoria and Renee were loudly screaming over who had insulted men first. Diane just watched the chaos unfold with the terrifying calm of a mother mentally updating the family's disaster response plan. That ridiculous number written on the check was real enough to make my pulse absolutely spike. I took the account not for love, but because I desperately wanted the cash and the raw opportunity. But taking it also permanently tied my entire reputation to a crazy family that interpreted every polite glance as a marriage proposal. Randall heavily patted my shoulder. Good man. The desperate dad was out here speed-running his daughter's wedding, instantly upgrading from dinner invites to venture capital. By the time we left, it was way past midnight, and the main campus gates were locked tight. Renee was so wasted she could barely stand, so I ended up carrying her all the way to the nearest hotel. 2 students, lingering by the gates, just stared, basically watching tomorrow's juiciest rumor walk right past them. As soon as we got inside the room, Renee aggressively grabbed my shirt collar. You totally quoted my line back there, she mumbled into my chest. Okay, you desperately need some water, I sighed. She leaned in dangerously close. Knocked a leftover glass of wine straight across the bed, and immediately threw up all over my shirt. Any ounce of romance quickly sprinted out the emergency exit. I rolled Renee over onto the clean side of the mattress, awkwardly slept in the desk chair, and left a single, extremely clear sticky note on her phone. Nothing happened. You spilled red wine, completely ruined my favorite shirt, and lost a brutal war against your own stomach. Bright and early, right before breakfast, my super SIM card started to ring. I answered the call from the lobby, my voice completely masked by a filter. Morning, Renee demanded, her tone sharp. Where are you? Are you at home? Why? I could hear paper nervously rustling on her end. She had found the note. Nothing, she muttered, her voice dropping a panicked octave. The voice filter had done its job perfectly. By noon, rumors were already flying. Kayla was desperately asking our classmates if Renee had spent the night at my place. Later that afternoon, Renee fiercely ambushed me right outside of class, trapping me in a corner. She confessed that the terrifying red stain had completely freaked her out before she found my note. Then, her eyes narrowed, calling my message straight up smug. I just smirked, accusing her of ruthlessly assaulting a perfectly innocent shirt. Furious, she blocked my number. Unbothered, I blocked her right back. Just to be sure, I checked an hour later. Yep, her block was definitely still active. The very next morning, after the whole bloodstain panic and our little phone standoff, I signed up for some intense, hardcore training. The live phase of the high-stakes finance challenge was fast approaching, and I needed to be ready. My physique had already leveled up, but I craved real, raw strength, the kind I could prove without relying on some glowing system screen. As I wrapped my hands for the workout, the bitter memories of my past rushed back with crystal clarity. I remembered how Kayla used to happily take my gifts, stringing me along just to keep me useful, always leaving me helplessly guessing. Jillian wouldn't have even looked at the old me until my face and status completely transformed. And Renee? She had mercilessly bullied me, simply because poor, pathetic Calvin looked like an easy target to step all over. Everyone had treated my pure kindness as an open invitation to use me. But not anymore. This time, anyone who dared to step on me was going to feel me stomp right back. I yanked my gym wraps tight and dove brutally into training for the next round. Randall's massive check had officially chained a piece of my brand new life to Victoria's powerful family. The very next time that arrogant Victoria dared to call me a dog, she actually brought a literal leash and a steep price tag to go with it. Friday night hit, and at a slick restaurant near campus, I dropped my very first competition bonus on the people closest to me. Meanwhile, Randall's $500,000 check was just quietly sitting, heavy and loaded, in my bank account. The sheer weight of Victoria's family fortune had already shifted the way everyone looked at me. Now, the next question was dangerously simple. What exactly would Victoria demand in return? But first, I had a perfectly good dinner to absolutely ruin. I had invited Renee, Kayla, Jillian, my boy Cody, and a few dorm buddies. Renee stubbornly refused the invite within 10 seconds flat. She aggressively texted back, "I am busy." I calmly replied, "Fine, then I guess I will just read chapter 12 out loud and ask the whole table exactly who Velvet Cucumber based her villain on." Naturally, Renee showed up before the appetizers even hit the table. Our class monitor, fuming like a literal volcano, practically slammed herself into the empty chair right beside me. "You are literally blackmailing an author you claim you do not even know," she hissed. I just smoothly slid the menu over to her. "I am simply supporting local literature," I teased. She viciously kicked my ankle under the table in response. In my defense, Renee had shown up wearing a stunning, fitted red dress to a casual dinner. That outfit had basically declared all-out war before she even took her seat. Cody Maddox caught the brutal under-table kick and cheerfully raised his glass. "Ah, the first sister-in-law has officially arrived," he cheered. Kayla immediately pointed to herself, offended. "Excuse me, first?" Jillian leaned in close to Cody, an evil smirk on her face. "Oh, please continue, I really want to watch him die." Our self-appointed sisters-in-law broadcaster had a captive audience, but absolutely zero survival instinct. I clinked my glass to cut Cody off before he could map out a whole fake family tree. The finance challenge paid out a nice little bonus, I announced to the table. "You guys helped me survive the brutal first rounds, so tonight's dinner is all on me." Right on cue, the server rolled in with even more mouth-watering food. Kayla completely dropped the act of pretending she had already eaten. Jillian boldly snatched food straight off my plate. And Renee? She subtly stole the best spot by dragging her chair much closer to mine. Unbelievably, everyone actually behaved for almost 4 straight minutes. A total tragedy. I slowly set down my fork. I also have some big news. The main campus wants me there full-time. I might be transferring. Renee's hands instantly froze right over her water glass. Kayla quickly asked, "Wait, when?" While Jillian shot me a deep, worried frown. "But you literally just got here." Renee deadpanned, her intense stare burning right through me. "You cannot transfer during the middle of this term." I let the heavy silence hang in the air for a second, soaking in their panic, before I cracked a grin. "You are absolutely correct," I chuckled. "Professor Madsen just offered me better research access. The actual transfer window is fully closed." Renee's glare sharpened into daggers. "So that was just a stupid prank." I gave a slow nod. "Yep, and a highly successful one at that." Renee leaned aggressively across the table, her eyes locked on mine. "But what about the finance challenge? What about our wager? What about—" She slammed the brakes right before accidentally blurting out the word, "novel." I leaned in and lowered my voice to a teasing whisper. What about the book, Renee? Her eyes shot wide open in sheer panic. Flustered, she snatched up a dinner roll and aggressively lobbed it straight at my chest. The bread bounced off me and splashed right into Cody's bowl of soup. Cody nonchalantly scooped the soggy roll up with his spoon. Ah, sweet domestic conflict. Just beautiful, Cody quipped. Renee pointed a deadly finger right at my face. You pull a stunt like that again, and I will personally transfer you straight through a window. My fake transfer announcement had lasted a total of 20 seconds. Yet, it completely exposed just how instantly and intensely Renee hated the very thought of me actually leaving. Honestly, I savored that little reaction way more than the cash bonus itself. Suddenly, Renee's phone buzzed hard against the table, and Cody cheekily reached for it. Now, which sister-in-law are we missing? He asked with a wicked grin. Renee fiercely slapped his hand away. But the screen lit up bright for all to see. Victoria Whitmore had just messaged her. The text from Victoria read, "Are you on campus? My mother wants those class notes you mentioned earlier." Panicking slightly, Renee hastily typed back, "I am just in my dorm room." But chaos-loving Cody had already snapped a sneaky group photo on his own phone. He leaned over Renee's shoulder, catching a crystal-clear glimpse of Victoria's name on her screen. "Oh, we absolutely have to invite the rich sister-in-law," Cody announced loudly. Renee snapped back, "Do not even think about it." But it was too late. Cody had already sent Victoria our group photo. "Oops, anyway, look," he laughed. Cody possessed this terrifying gift to turn a single tap of a button into a full-blown natural disaster. Exactly 10 minutes after Renee had boldly lied about being at home, the infamous Victoria strode right into the restaurant. She looked untouchable, rocking a crisp white coat layered over a sleek black dress, firmly clutching a thin, ultra-exclusive family account statement in one hand. Every single conversation near the entrance instantly died down to nervous whispers. The ice-cold heiress with her metaphorical leash locked onto our table, shot a piercing glare at Renee, and coldly glanced down at the group photo displayed on her own screen. "Wow, really nice dorm room," Victoria told Renee, her voice dripping with pure sarcasm. Renee defensively crossed her arms. "I just decided to change my plans." Ignoring her, Victoria dramatically slammed the financial statement right down beside my dinner plate. I locked eyes with her, totally unfazed. The bold text at the top clearly proved that Victoria's powerful mother, Diane Whitmore, had officially authorized my access that very evening. Right there, printed in bold ink, my name sat right next to Randall's massive management advance and the multi-million-dollar account he desperately needed me to handle. Kayla instantly felt the heavy tension in the air and slid her drink out of the splash zone. Jillian, meanwhile, just pulled up another empty chair. "We ordered way too much food anyway," I said, waving our server over. "Add one more place setting." Victoria stared at me in disbelief. "You are actually inviting me to sit?" I nodded calmly. "You dragged yourself all the way across town carrying a stack of paperwork. You have at least earned some dessert." Cody immediately raised his glass in a mock toast. "Behold, the second sister-in-law has officially arrived." Victoria snapped her head toward him. "Second?" Cody gleefully pointed at Renee. Renee immediately pointed an accusing finger at me. "Calvin is the one who encourages him." I just sighed. "Cody was already broken when he got here," I replied dryly. "I am just managing his symptoms." Despite the chaos, Victoria went ahead and took the seat right next to mine. That little seating choice made Renee scoot her chair an inch closer, leaving me trapped right between both women. Renee leaned in close to Victoria. "Let me guess. You showed up because Cody sent you a picture?" Victoria calmly flipped open the menu. "I came because I found Calvin's name inside my family's private financial accounts." Instantly, the entire table went dead silent. I slowly raised my glass to the concept of friendship. Apparently, being my friend now required a full financial disclosure. Surprisingly, Victoria actually ate with us instead of blowing up and causing a massive public scene. Honestly, that eerie restraint worried me way more than her usual shouting. The moment dinner wrapped up, I stood up to pay the bill so I could head over to the gym. Victoria stood up at the exact same time. The second we stepped outside the restaurant, she grabbed my arm before I could even reach the street corner. The streetlights were bright enough that everyone at our dinner table could see us perfectly through the giant glass windows. Cody, being Cody, immediately pressed his face right up against the glass to spy on us. Victoria aggressively held up a printed bank statement. "My mother finally gave me account access tonight. My dad paid you $500,000. I glanced down at the highlighted page. It was clearly labeled as a management advance. Victoria's mouth hardened into a furious line. You took money from my father, accepted control of his account, and casually sat at our table while he literally planned out our entire future together. I looked her dead in the eye. He planned. I just ate the food. She stepped menacingly close. You are nothing but his hired dog. And bam, there it was. That word struck the exact same old bitter wound. Wealthy people saw money, random kindness, or desperate need, and immediately assumed they completely owned the person on the receiving end. I kept my voice completely flat and unbothered. Hey, dogs get fed, I assume you brought terms? Victoria didn't hesitate. She aggressively swiped open a second screen on her phone. Her family trust, liquid allowance, company shares, and luxury vehicles easily carried an asset scale somewhere near $20 million. But only a much smaller liquid cash account could actually be moved immediately. That was more than enough. The rest was just financial pressure she could grow later to keep me trapped. Victoria coldly started listing off her strict demands. You will answer whenever I call, you will attend our boring family events, and you will help manage the accounts. Oh, and when I tell you to stay the hell away from Renee, you stay away. I tilted my head. Is there anything else your highness wants? I asked dryly. Victoria added one final condition. We present a romantic relationship publicly. That way, my parents will finally stop panicking, and Yuki will back us for the capital we need. I slowly looked over toward the brightly lit restaurant window. Cody, Kayla, Jillian, and Renee were doing a hilariously terrible job of pretending they were not watching our every move. Victoria finally offered her first number. I can place $1 million fully under your management. A harsh, sharp laugh escaped my throat. She narrowed her eyes in pure annoyance. What exactly is so funny? Let me get this straight. You want complete control over my phone, my daily schedule, my reputation, mandatory family appearances, and my entire dating life? I gave her a mocking smirk. $1 million barely even covers the sheer inconvenience of dealing with you. Victoria just stared at me in total disbelief. Wait, are you seriously negotiating with me right now? No, I am flat out rejecting a very cheap leash. Her jaw instantly tightened in anger. You already work for my father anyway. I stepped directly into her personal space. Your father actually hired my professional skills. You, on the other hand, are desperately trying to date me through controlling my bank accounts. Victoria's eyes flashed with pure, unadulterated fury. This is completely fake, she hissed. I mockingly counted off her own ridiculous terms on my fingers. Daily check-in calls, intimate family dinners, public couple photos, and needing your royal permission just to talk to other women? I looked down into her angry eyes. Sweetheart, that is just dating with absolutely terrible corporate branding. Victoria lowered her voice into a dangerous whisper. Do you honestly think I actually want you? I answered without missing a single beat. You crossed the entire town wearing that gorgeous dress just to threaten me right under a public restaurant window. For one split second, her eyes subconsciously dropped down to my mouth. I definitely caught that tiny slip. She quickly recovered her icy composure. Prove it, then, she challenged. Meanwhile, the entire nosy dinner group had already crept outside. Cody stood nearest to the heavy glass door, his phone surprisingly lowered for once in his life. Renee hovered right behind him, laser-focused on the bold shade of Victoria's lipstick. I gently grabbed Victoria's delicate wrist and pulled her one deliberate step closer to my chest. This is your absolute last chance to back down, I warned her. Victoria stubbornly lifted her chin in defiance. You would not dare, she whispered, stopping just close enough to easily pull away if she wanted to. But Victoria stayed exactly where she was. So, I slid one hand firmly around her waist and kissed her. Victoria instantly froze like a statue. The busy city street seemed to go completely quiet around us. And then, her trembling fingers slowly tightened their grip against the fabric of my shirt. I firmly broke off the kiss, before Cody could somehow spin it into a live-streamed wedding announcement. Victoria just stared at me, completely wide-eyed. Her perfectly applied lipstick was noticeably smudged. Then, her initial shock vanished, her jaw locked tight, and her fiery eyes quickly flicked toward our very attentive audience. She furiously raised one hand to slap me. Instantly, Cody's camera phone shot right back up. Victoria spotted the eager witnesses and reluctantly lowered her hand. That was my very first kiss, she told me, her voice shaking slightly. I just shrugged. Hey, you are the one who put it inside the fake relationship terms. She angrily shoved me hard in the chest. You are so incredibly unbelievable. I just flashed her a cocky smile. Then raise the account limit, boss. Victoria honestly looked ready to commit a brutal felony right there with her designer handbag. But then she took a deep breath and spat out, $11 million to start. The transfer happens on Monday. The supposed hired dog had totally rejected the cheap leash, boldly kissed the arrogant heiress, and successfully turned her hostile threat into a $1 million starting account. Beautiful. It was absolutely irresponsible. But still so damn beautiful. Renee didn't waste a single second. Stepping out from the restaurant, Renee saw the completely wrecked state of Victoria's lipstick and marched straight into the middle of the drama. Renee boldly caught Victoria's chin between two delicate fingers, inspecting the smudge. What exactly just happened out here? Victoria angrily yanked her face free. Why don't you ask Calvin? Renee looked closely at the damaged makeup, and then let her eyes trail over to my own face. Oh my God. You actually kissed her, Renee told me, eyes gleaming with chaotic energy. I kept a straight face. Her fake relationship terms demanded solid visual proof, I answered smoothly. Renee's mischievous smile became dangerously calm. Oh, so offering proof is what magically creates relationships now? Victoria angrily crossed her arms over her chest. Apparently, I muttered. Renee slowly turned her intense gaze right back to Victoria. Well then, I think our own little rumor deserves equal documentation. Renee locked her hands tightly onto Victoria's shoulders and planted a fast, unapologetic kiss right on her lips, leaving the entire room stunned. Victoria flinched back in pure shock, while Cody's fork hit the floor with a clatter, and Kayla violently gasped behind her hands. I swear, this dinner is going to last forever, Jillian whispered in absolute disbelief. Renee just smirked, casually wiping a smudge of Victoria's lipstick from her thumb. There, Renee announced, her voice dripping with triumph. Now nobody owns the evidence. Victoria just stared at her like she had lost her mind. You are completely insane. Ignoring her, Renee pointed a sharp finger straight at me. He is the one who started it, she fired back. I just leaned in, perfectly calm. Excellent teamwork, ladies. The family is going to absolutely love this little update. Of course, Cody had already blasted the drama to the entire dorm chat. By the time midnight rolled around, the wild rumor had already infected Victoria's inner family circle. Her mother, Diane, sent a panic text with just 3 massive question marks. Her dad, Randall, called me exactly 1 time, only to hang up the second before I could answer. The desperate father who was trying to speedrun our wedding had just hit a massive, unexpected detour. Later that evening, sweating it out at the gym, I shot a quick message to Eliza about that dinner I still owed her. I kept it simple and typed, Tuesday evening. Aubrey swooped into our small group chat and replied first. I am totally free. Eliza chimed in a full minute later, her tone shifting. Let us just make it a group dinner for now. I stared at my screen, reading both messages twice over to catch the vibe. The pathetic, old version of me would have treated Aubrey's lightning-fast reply like a literal marriage proposal. But the upgraded, adult version of me had already patched out that pathetic software bug. Aubrey's eagerness had clearly spooked Eliza into changing her romantic invitation into a crowd thing. I already had enough women fighting a war over me, so I just left that drama alone. Right on cue, my anonymous account buzzed to life. Velvet Cucumber fired off a text, Victoria kissed me. I kissed her right back, and Calvin just watched the whole thing. I am so unbelievably furious. I smirked and typed back, you keep wasting your time with everyone except the exact guy who is making you so mad. She immediately shot back, that sounds like absolute garbage fake psychology. Without missing a single beat, I challenged her, then prove me wrong, test it out, spend exactly 1 full hour completely alone with him. Velvet Cucumber hesitated, before asking, where are we supposed to do that? I typed back, somewhere you cannot possibly hide behind your boring class monitor duties. Exactly 5 minutes later, Renee finally texted my real phone, taking the bait. Meet me outside the library, right now. At 11 o'clock sharp, Renee was standing rigidly beneath the harsh library lights, wrapped tightly in a dark coat. Her boiling anger had easily survived the chaotic dinner, and had only grown stronger on the walk over. She aggressively blocked my path. Do you really think kissing Victoria makes you look brave? I just scoffed right back. You kissed her, too, that was nothing but pure retaliation. Very civic-minded of you, honestly. Renee took a furious step closer, closing the gap. You constantly act like you completely understand exactly what I want. I raised an eyebrow and asked my question. Then say it out loud. She held my gaze, her eyes practically burning into mine. Would you go to a hotel room with me? The heavy challenge hung between us like a loaded gun. I flashed a slow smile. Would you actually have the guts to walk inside? A deep flush spread across Renee's cheeks, but she held her ground. You pick the hotel, then. I laughed softly, and told her that booking the presidential suite would probably terrify her right back down to the lobby. She let out a sharp, mocking scoff. Just send the damn address. But right before I could even reply, I spotted Victoria's luxury car peeling away from the far side of the campus. Renee caught the movement and instantly spun around, her jealousy spiking. She is going to secretly meet you somewhere, isn't she? I just lifted my empty hands in surrender. I am literally standing right here in front of you. Renee completely ignored my rock-solid logic and took off to tail Victoria's car. Turns out, Victoria was only rushing home because her mother, Diane, had suddenly fallen ill. Renee embarrassingly discovered this right at the Whitmore family's grand front door. I only figured out the rest of the messy details when Victoria called me directly from her sprawling entry hall and threw me straight onto speakerphone. Victoria was absolutely snapping. Your psychotic little class monitor literally followed me all the way home because she was convinced I was sneaking off to meet you. Renee immediately shouted over her. You sped off campus right after midnight, the exact second after I asked Calvin for a hotel address. What the hell was I supposed to think? My mother is severely sick. Victoria fired back, her voice shaking. Some of us actually care about our families. Renee's explosive anger vanished in an instant. Oh my God, is Diane going to be okay? Victoria's frantic voice finally softened. Yes, she will be fine. Renee respectfully dropped the argument right then and there. But of course, Victoria just had to make the whole situation incredibly messy all over again. You are still shamelessly chasing after my fake boyfriend, she taunted Renee. Not backing down, Renee fired right back. And you are still calling him fake while desperately blowing your family's money, just to keep him around. Victoria glared down at her phone screen. Calvin, for God's sake, say something. I sighed deeply and told them, honestly, you two just followed the completely wrong person tonight. But I have to admit, I am highly impressed by the dedication. Renee completely ignored my sarcastic praise. Listen to me, Victoria, I am absolutely not surrendering him to you. Victoria's reply was ice cold. Well, neither am I. The two of them had finally said the fiercely quiet part out loud, somehow without entirely destroying their friendship. Victoria then barked into the phone, she is crashing here with me tonight. I am keeping her locked up and far away from your stupid little hotel dare. Renee tried to loudly protest, but Victoria brutally cut the call dead. Exactly 1 minute later, my phone buzzed with a private text from Renee, tomorrow night. The presidential suite, send me the damn address. I casually typed back, honestly, you should just stay safely at home. Renee fired back one final, explosive message. You absolute coward. I purposefully pretended to refuse her because I knew her raging pride would easily take care of the rest. At 10 o'clock the following night, I went ahead and booked the ridiculously lavish presidential suite at the Meridian Grand Hotel. The Meridian Grand was that wildly expensive luxury hotel near the campus where I had dropped serious cash on rooms before. I was still forced to pay night by painful night, since that sweet annual deal did not even exist for me yet. Renee had fiercely demanded the address, so I finally sent her the room number, along with one final warning. Stay home if you are only coming here to stubbornly prove a point. Her reply was instantaneous. Open the damn door. The absolute volcano of a class monitor had apparently already made it to my elevator. I had just paid the massive suite charge when my system suddenly chimed out loud, right before the physical receipt even finished printing. Themed gift successfully acquired. It was a slick hotel reimbursement card. Now, any eligible luxury hotel charges would trigger a massive 80% cash reimbursement immediately after payment. System points would now strictly accrue based on Calvin Archer's actual out-of-pocket costs. This magical little card was going to make all my future high-end hotel bills wonderfully cheap, but first, I actually had to survive the fiery woman marching straight toward my room. Renee knocked sharply, exactly once. I pulled the door open, immediately taken aback. She was wearing a stunning black dress hidden under a short, stylish coat. Her long hair flowed completely loose, and her intense expression made it dead obvious she had been frantically rehearsing her self-control during the entire elevator ride up. In my defense, I definitely noticed how good she looked in that dress right before I caught on to whatever dangerous plan she had. Renee boldly stepped right past me into the room. Wow, you actually rented the freaking presidential suite. I shut the door behind her. You wanted courage? Well, courage comes with room service, I said, locking us in. She strolled through the massive living room, running a hand over the cold marble bar before glancing at the bedroom. Between the floor-to-ceiling windows and the private dining area, the suite was so ridiculously huge, it made a college freshman like me look financially suspicious. Renee turned to face me, her movements painfully slow. "Just how much did this place cost?" she demanded. "So you came here to talk about money?" I replied. "I came to make sure Victoria understands a little something about, well, romance." With that, Renee slipped off her coat. "Call her right now," she ordered. I just sat back on the plush sofa. "And what exactly do I get out of it?" I asked. Her eyes narrowed into slits. "You're the one who invited me," she snapped. "Actually," I countered, "you demanded the room number. And you actually sent it," Renee shot back. I just nodded. "Yeah, and then you walked right through that door." As she stepped closer, a sly grin crossed my face. "Admit it, you're enjoying this." I looked up at her, totally unfazed. "Come on, you wore that stunning dress to a hotel showdown. Let's just respect the evidence here." Before she could argue, a hotel attendant knocked and brought in a welcome tray. The guy walked in, saw Renee looming over me, and quickly placed 2 champagne glasses next to a bowl of fresh fruit. "Will Mr. and Mrs. Archer be needing breakfast at 8 o'clock? The attendant asked politely. Renee's face instantly burned bright red. I opened my mouth to correct him, but Renee beat me to it. 9 o'clock, she blurted out. The attendant simply nodded and slipped out the door. I turned to her with a raised brow. "Mrs. Archer?" Renee jabbed a finger toward the closed door. "Look, she made an assumption, and you just sat there and confirmed it," she fired back. "Hey, I only corrected the breakfast time," I defended myself. "Listen, she confirmed breakfast for the both of us, and I was just enjoying the moment," I told her. But Renee wasn't having it. She snatched my phone right off the table. "Tell Victoria I am here with you." I smoothly took my phone right back. Her pride burst. She crossed her arms, fuming. "Are you seriously charging me? You want exclusive public rights? That is going to cost a hell of a lot more than just one dramatic, angry entrance." Renee leaned in close, her presence intoxicating. "Tell her that you chose me, and I will give you exactly what you want." I stared right back. "Everything?" I asked. For a second, her ironclad confidence actually flickered. "Within reason," she mumbled. "Yeah, well, your version of reason has a history of just throwing crumbs," I shot back. That did it. Renee grabbed my jaw and kissed me hard enough to instantly kill the joke. She pulled back, her eyes blazing. "Consider that the deposit." I just looked at her, totally stunned. "That is one dangerous payment method." Renee stepped right between my knees and the heavy coffee table, cornering me. "What do you really want?" she asked, her voice dropping. I decided to answer her completely honestly, a choice that you make all on your own. No collars, no candy, and no stupid games. Her expression softened, and all the playful banter completely vanished from the room. I looked at her and asked, "Are you here right now because you actually chose this?" Renee held my gaze, not backing down for a single second. "Yes," she whispered. I didn't blink. "Are you totally sober?" I checked. "Yes," she repeated softly. "Do you want me to stop?" I asked. "No," she breathed. And with that, Renee grabbed a fistful of my shirt and smashed her lips against mine. Her first real kiss with me was aggressive, super competitive, and honestly, completely on brand for her. I stood up and pulled her flush against my chest. She kissed me again, but this time it was much slower, much deeper. But just as I reached for the bedroom door handle, I froze in place. Renee reached out and gently touched my hand. I looked up and spoke to the room's AI system. "Yes, Calvin. Lock the door." At my command, the suite's ambient lights slowly dimmed down to a warm, romantic glow. Whatever happened next stayed completely hidden behind that locked door. Much later, Renee sat next to me on the sofa, swallowed up in one of the oversized hotel robes. A faint, harmless red line from the prop cuffs marked one of her wrists. The second she noticed me staring at it, she quickly yanked her sleeve down to cover the mark. Then, she leaned her head back against the plush cushions, exhausted but totally relaxed. "I suppose I could tolerate being in fourth place," she said out of nowhere. I turned to look at her, confused. "Fourth? Yeah, after Eliza, Victoria, Kayla, or whoever else your massive ego decides to recruit." I couldn't help but laugh out loud at that. "Did you seriously just rank yourself inside my dating life?" Renee shot me a deadly serious look. "Hey, fourth place can still win a long-term competition. You somehow managed to turn romance into a literal portfolio strategy," I teased her. "You are the one who started it." She snapped back, immediately demanding that I text Victoria to brag that we had spent the entire night together. "No way," I flat out refused. Renee's mouth tightened into a thin, angry line. You kissed her right in front of everyone, she argued. Yeah, well, you kissed her publicly too, I answered right back. That was a strictly tactical move. Renee yelled, throwing her hands up in frustration. Well, so was mine. I told her with a smirk. Without missing a beat, Renee grabbed a plush pillow and hurled it straight at my head. Our relationship had clearly crossed a massive physical line, only for us to immediately go right back to bickering like crazy. Honestly, that was the most aggressively Renee outcome I could have possibly asked for. By the time breakfast rolled around, Renee was fully dressed in long sleeves, her expression icy cold. The same hotel attendant came back at 9 o'clock sharp, carrying 2 steaming trays of food. Renee just stared at the fancy little name card, that read, Mr. and Mrs. Archer, before aggressively flipping it face down on the table. Keeping a little souvenir? I asked with a smirk. I am keeping hard evidence of this hotel's sheer incompetence, she muttered darkly. And just like that, she marched right out the door without even bothering to give me a goodbye kiss. Just before the elevator doors slid shut, Renee glared at me and said, last night changes absolutely nothing. I just smiled and called back, hey, you're the one who confirmed breakfast. The heavy doors closed right on her furious face. By the time I finally made it back to my dorm room, Renee had already blocked my real phone number all over again. Cody was waiting for me at the door, both of his hands raised in surrender. Apparently, a sneaky lobby photo of Renee walking into the Meridian had found its way to him overnight, and the idiot had immediately forwarded it to our massive dorm group chat. Look, I just thought it was funny, Cody admitted, shrinking back against the wall. I calmly dropped my bag onto the floor. Exactly how many people saw that photo? I asked. Jordan chimed in from the back to answer for him. More than enough, Jordan said grimly. I silently walked over and opened the drawer where I kept my hammer. Cody practically jumped backward in terror. I'm deleting everything right now, he panicked. I just slid the drawer shut. Relax. The hammer is officially retired from doing my public relations work, I told them. But deleting a photo did not kill the rumor. All the guys who hated my high rank now genuinely believed Renee had spent the night with me in a presidential suite I just casually rented. Add in Victoria's very public, totally fake relationship with me, and this new story looked exactly like a massive, undeniable declaration of war. Later that same weekend, Alden Trower decided to drag me along to an exclusive, high-stakes senior money game. Alden had practically memorized the entire campus power map, and he always preferred keeping useful people around instead of loud ones. Travis Calderon was sitting right there behind a massive stack of cash. The guy who tried to steal my key had already completely lost all of his dignity back at my dorm, but now, he desperately wanted to prove that my newfound wealth was totally fake. Travis sneered and aggressively shoved the buy-in money toward the center of the table. A presidential suite, a top national rank, and Victoria Whitmore on your arm, Travis mocked. Tell me, which part of that is actually real? I calmly pulled out the empty chair, slapped my own money down on the table, and looked him dead in the eye. Pick one. I smoothly paid the ante. I had built up my gambling skills through a whole lot of reckless spending and cutthroat active play. Naturally, the very first hand of the night stayed small, but the tension was already bubbling over. Travis always rubbed his watch clasp whenever he was lying. I caught the obvious tell twice. On the final hand, he confidently pushed $3,000 right into the middle of the table. Call it, Travis taunted me. Let's see if those prestigious school rankings actually mean anything without Professor Madsen holding your hand. I called his bluff. Travis proudly flipped over an ace high. I slammed down 2 pair. The dealer's polite smile instantly vanished. Near the door, one guy quietly slid his cash as far away from Travis as possible. Alden shoved the massive pot toward me. Pay the freshman. You're the one who invited him. Travis just glared at the cards. Lucky hand, I told him. Lucky people don't need to read your pathetic tells. His thumb immediately snapped away from his watch clasp. Outside, Alden gave me a serious warning. The elite seniors were going to keep digging into my family, the hotel business, and especially Victoria. Let them ask, I brushed it off. Alden nervously glanced back at the closed door. They really don't like answers that make them feel small. Later that night, Velvet Cucumber reached out through the single channel Renee hadn't completely blocked yet. I slept with a guy who genuinely thinks he's a demigod, she wrote. He probably believes he completely won. I typed back, well, did he? He won one single night. This relationship is an absolute war. Renee then listed out her brutal next moves. I'll study harder, train, write, earn way more money, and then come back strong enough to totally control him. I replied, maybe stop blocking him long enough to actually compete. No, she fired back. Let him suffer. I checked my real phone. Yep, still blocked. Petty, but highly effective. Honestly, I respected the absolute craftsmanship of her grudge. The following week, I asked Alden to install gymnastic rings above the main campus training floor. In return, I offered his entire group full access to the luxurious Meridian suites I frequently rented out. Frequently? Alden asked, raising an eyebrow. I have at least one lockdown for the entire year, I assured him. Still, Alden carefully checked the ceiling mounts. The rings go up tomorrow. Just then, Victoria strolled right into the gym, wearing dark sunglasses indoors and flashing 2 cinema tickets. My father's investment account better have some good news, she demanded. It absolutely does, I said. I need to show Randall the latest results. Victoria playfully waved the tickets in my face. Movie first. Fake boyfriends require regular maintenance. Alden just awkwardly looked back and forth between us. Victoria casually hooked one finger through the strap of my gym bag. So, are you coming or what? I turned to Alden. Looks like my generous sponsor has scheduled some mandatory recreation. Victoria smirked. Keep calling me your sponsor, and I'll start charging you heavy interest. Judging by Alden's stunned expression, our whole arrangement had officially stopped looking fake. 3 weeks later, right outside the cinema, Victoria turned our casual movie date into a full-blown photo shoot, and then dragged me out to a fancy dinner afterward. She looked stunning in a fitted cream coat layered over a dark dress. I was still staring at her when she suddenly linked her arm tightly through mine. Out of nowhere, a camera flashed from across the street. I quickly turned toward the glare. The shady photographer immediately lowered his lens and bolted. Victoria didn't even flinch. She just calmly adjusted my collar and smiled sweetly right at the disappearing camera. I looked at her. Public relations stunt? She shrugged. You agreed to provide proof. That photo was close enough to a public admission. Back at the lavish Whitmore mansion, Victoria's incredibly observant mother, Diane, met us right at the door. Her eyes locked instantly onto our linked arms. Good movie? Diane asked, probing. Victoria didn't miss a beat, just average. Diane quickly studied my collar, and then zeroed in on Victoria's slightly smudged lipstick. Very average, she echoed. The resident lipstick detective missed absolutely nothing. Inside the elegant sitting room, Diane purposefully seated us on the exact same sofa and brought out one single dessert plate with 2 forks. Victoria stared blankly at the single plate. Mom, Diane just beamed. You survived one whole movie together, share. I took the first bite. Victoria immediately stole the second, and then gently wiped a tiny dot of cream off my lip with her thumb. Your fake girlfriend package officially includes portion control, she teased. I fired right back. Your father's account is paying out incredibly well right now. I can definitely afford to order another plate. But before I could even wave down the server, Victoria leaned in close and kissed me. Diane happily walked out of the room, smiling like she had just closed a massive corporate deal. Once alone, Victoria dropped her voice. Renee told me she spent the night with you. Renee says very dramatic things whenever she's angry, I defended. Besides, Alden saw me hanging out in the senior rooms before the weekend even ended. It was an incredibly thin alibi. Honestly, I think Victoria just wanted an excuse to delay our inevitable fight, because she surprisingly let my shaky answer slide. I shifted gears and showed her the threatening messages 2 wealthy seniors had secretly forwarded through other terrified students. Your very public photos are attracting arrogant men, who think access to you can be defended by violently threatening me, I warned her. Victoria read through the hostile messages twice. Her expression completely lost its playful, teasing edge. Are they actually dangerous? She asked. They're incredibly entitled, I replied, and that instantly becomes dangerous whenever they start to lose. During dinner, Victoria's intense father, Randall, opened up his account summary. The aggressive returns had officially recovered a massive, visible chunk of his earlier financial losses. Randall actually stopped grilling me with invasive dating questions just long enough to obsessively study the new numbers. Then, without a word, he unclasped an absurdly expensive watch and placed it deliberately right beside my plate. Keep this, Randall ordered. Important people who know me will immediately recognize it. Victoria stared at him in shock. Dad, Randall just waved her off dismissively. Calvin earned it. The overbearing father, who was speedrunning our fake wedding, had aggressively moved from writing fat checks to literally putting his own watch on my wrist. Diane carefully watched Victoria's reaction. Victoria just stared blankly at the heavy watch on my wrist. Right before dessert arrived, she leaned over and kissed my cheek right where both of her parents could clearly see it. "Maintenance," Victoria whispered softly. "Your premium service plan is getting really expensive," I murmured back. Later that exact night, Victoria uploaded the paparazzi cinema photo, along with another picture of me standing right beside Randall. My phone buzzed aggressively before the viral post even finished spreading. Alden urgently texted, "3 seniors just got their hands on your dorm key. 11 tomorrow night. Do not go in blind." 10:45 Friday night, I returned to my top-floor dorm room and found my key missing. Alden's warning was dead specific, they were coming at 11. It all started because Victoria's latest post showed me right next to Randall Whitmore, wearing the expensive watch he'd gifted me. According to Alden, Travis Calderon took one look at that photo and saw it as hard proof that I had stolen his precious Victoria away from him. Travis was that pathetically jealous senior I'd absolutely humiliated at cards earlier, and now his bruised ego had recruited 2 of his frat bro buddies for payback. So, they swiped my room key without permission and planned a little midnight group visit. How incredibly social of them. Honestly, I'd already reported the missing key to the dorm supervisor hours ago. I actually asked the supervisor to walk the floor right after 11, claiming I was just testing out room safety. I knew the heavy sound of his footsteps would add the perfect psychological pressure on these intruders. But even with that backup plan, my little death trap still had to execute flawlessly without his direct involvement. My duffel bag held a gruesome haul. Gallons of stage blood, hyper-realistic rubber intestines, and a massive white cloth I'd snagged from a costume shop that very evening. Up above, the heavy gymnastic rings Alden had installed were hanging dead center in the room. I left my trusty hammer sitting quietly in its drawer. When it comes to true terror, a guilty conscience and a wild imagination will always do way better work than blunt force. I killed the lights, secured my entire body weight through the rings, and let the flowing white cloth completely hide the straps. Viewed from the doorway in pitch black, my body looked entirely suspended, lifeless, and eerily still. At exactly 10:59, cold metal aggressively scraped inside the lock. Travis pushed his way in first, practically dripping with arrogance, while a second senior eagerly followed right behind him. A third guy squeezed through the frame behind them and quietly clicked the door shut. In the dim light, Travis smugly held my stolen key between 2 fingers like some kind of grand prize. "We scare the living crap out of him once, and he stops acting like Victoria belongs to him," Travis muttered. The second senior aggressively rolled his shoulders, adding, "Yeah, let's make the little punk apologize on video." The third senior nervously glanced toward my dark desk, warning, "Just watch out for that hammer of his." But the second guy scoffed, dismissing me instantly, "Bro, relax, he's just one pathetic freshman." They had marched in here armed with a pathetic romantic claim, a viral camera plan, and 3 full-grown bodies stacked against my one. They had absolutely earned every ounce of the brutal humiliation currently waiting for them in the dark. Suddenly, Travis caught sight of the pale, ghostly shape hanging from the ceiling. He slammed on the brakes so hard, the second senior crashed right into his back. Panic setting in, the third senior frantically raised his phone light. The pale white beam swept the room and locked onto my shoes, dangling lifelessly, several feet above the floor. For 2 agonizing seconds, absolutely nobody dared to breathe. The second senior finally whispered, his voice trembling, "Calvin?" Right on cue, I let one foot rotate slowly in the air. The third senior let out a blood-curdling scream. Travis scrambled backward in pure terror, violently crashing into my desk. The second senior frantically clawed at the door handle, completely missing it twice in his absolute blind panic. Think about it, 3 grown men had confidently entered my room to beat me to a pulp. A simple white bed sheet had instantly reduced them to malfunctioning pieces of furniture. I slowly lowered my head slightly beneath the heavy cloth. "Why, did you come here?" I rasped out in a dead, hollow voice. Travis instantly let out a pathetic, high-pitched whimper, a sound I had never expected to hear from a man who had strutted in with that much confidence. The second senior hesitantly reached a trembling hand toward me, then instantly froze the second the cloth shifted again. Tears in his eyes, the third senior desperately whispered, "Oh my God, we need to call someone right now." "Shut up," Travis viciously snapped back. "Nobody calls anyone. We were never here, understand? Beautiful." The cowardly key thief had already reached the criminal cover-up stage before even bothering to check if I was actually dead. They frantically rushed for the door, practically climbing over each other to escape. But in the chaotic stampede, the third senior's heavy shoe stepped directly onto my hidden prop bag. Cold rubber intestines violently slid across the floor, completely drenched in a thick, sticky red syrup. He looked down, saw the horrific, bloody mess wrapped around his shoe, and instantly hurled right beside Cody's desk. The second senior hysterically shouted out, "He's dead, he's really dead." At that exact moment, I silently dropped down from the gymnastic rings right behind them. "He's also incredibly tired of your nonsense," I told them casually. All three men whipped around in absolute horror. The white cloth dramatically dropped from my shoulders as thick stage blood visibly ran down my torn shirt. I flipped the switch, and under the harsh room light, the props were now glaringly obvious cheap rubber. Yet, Travis still kept himself fearfully pressed flat against the door, and the second senior defensively raised both trembling hands in surrender. "This is completely insane," the second guy finally sputtered out. I glared at him. "You literally stole my room key at 11 at night just to ambush and attack me." He choked on his words, suddenly realizing he had absolutely no reply that could possibly improve his terrible position. The third senior violently wiped the lingering vomit from his mouth, groaning, "We just thought this would be an easy beatdown." I locked eyes with him. "You want to know what I think?" I slowly, menacingly pointed a single finger at the filthy floor. "Clean it, now." Travis just stared at me, dumbfounded. "Are you crazy? You want us to clean?" In response, I calmly slid open my desk drawer, fully revealing the heavy steel hammer without ever touching the handle inside. Travis swallowed hard and immediately grabbed the paper towels. The second senior frantically found the wet mop, while the third guy shakily bagged up the bloody rubber props, visibly gagging as he tried his hardest not to look directly at them. Alden confidently strolled in exactly 5 minutes later. He took one amused look at my wide-open door and casually said, "Honestly, I only came up here to make sure your little prank didn't accidentally create a real dead body." Instead of a crime scene, he found 3 allegedly tough senior attackers, desperately scrubbing my dirty floor on their hands and knees, all while I comfortably sat on my bed, peacefully reading a book. Alden smirked and looked right down at Travis. "Damn, did you guys lose a fight to a housekeeping crew?" he mocked. Travis's jaw clenched, but he just humiliatedly kept on mopping. Barely 5 minutes earlier, Travis had proudly held my stolen key, like a shiny championship trophy. Now, he was pathetically clutching Cody's stinking trash bag while his buddy frantically worked the mop. Alden leaned against the wall, silently waiting until the entire floor was spotlessly clean. Right on schedule, the heavy, echoing footsteps of the dorm supervisor passed directly outside our room at 11:10. Travis instantly froze in sheer panic, his sweaty hands gripping the mop handle like a lifeline. I stayed completely silent, letting them sweat. The footsteps slowly continued down the hall, and Travis aggressively resumed his frantic mopping. Breaking the tension, Alden coldly reminded them, "Look at the facts, boys. You broke in here with a stolen key. Calvin is the only one who decides whether this ends here, or if you all get expelled tonight." I looked down at the 3 trembling men with absolute disgust. "Return the key immediately, and you're paying to replace Cody's ruined rug, and stay the hell out of my room forever." Utterly defeated, Travis quietly placed the stolen key right back on my desk. The second senior practically shoved a stack of cash at me to cover the ruined rug before sprinting out the door. The third senior completely refused to even meet my eyes as he shamefully scurried out behind them. Right after they finally left, I casually stepped out and found the dorm supervisor doing his rounds in the hall. Playing the innocent victim, I told him that 3 unauthorized seniors had somehow used my missing key to break in, and they had only just returned it after recklessly damaging my roommate's rug. He frowned and immediately logged the serious late-night entry into the system. Of course, I completely kept the gory fake corpse part out of my official report. Walking back inside, Alden looked up at the heavy metal rings swaying from the ceiling. "You literally made me install those because you said it was for your strength training," he said, shaking his head. I flashed a wicked smirk and answered, "Hey, doesn't staging a murder count as cross-training?" He actually laughed out loud despite himself. I walked over to the mirror, noticing the heavy cloth had actually rubbed a vivid, painful-looking red line right around my neck. Without hesitating, I snapped one dramatic photo of the bruised mark and fired it straight over to Victoria. I typed out a quick message, "Just so you know, your obsessive admirers actually tried to strangle me tonight." Sure, the sentence was totally unfair and wildly exaggerated, but that damning photo made it look 100% believable. The results were instantaneous. First thing the very next morning, a panicked, guilt-ridden Victoria aggressively burst right into my luxurious, frequent suite at the Meridian Grand, all completely driven by that perfectly staged redneck photo. She had raced across town, her hair an absolute mess. Her coat hung wide open as she grabbed my shoulders before the door even clicked shut. "Calvin, who did this to you?" she breathed. I simply pulled back my shirt collar to reveal the shallow cloth burn. "I did," I admitted, deadpan. "Your fan club gave me the perfect excuse." Victoria just stared at me. Her eyes darted from the red mark to my perfectly clean room, and finally to the haunted house prop bag sitting by the wall. "Wait, you knew they were coming for you?" she asked in disbelief. "Alden tipped me off," I replied. "And your little public photo gave them all the motive they needed," I added. Victoria immediately yanked out her phone and deleted her latest post right in front of me. Then, she shoved my chest hard with both hands. "You made me think they actually hanged you." I smoothly caught one of her wrists. "And you made 3 jealous guys think I stole you. That doesn't justify faking your own death," she yelled. "Agreed," I smirked. "But my method was way more effective." Victoria tried to yank her hand back. I pulled her lightly across my knee, gave the back of her coat a quick, playful swat, and let her sit right back up. She instantly smacked my shoulder. "You absolute psychopath," she muttered. I silenced her with a kiss before she could throw another insult. Victoria melted into it for a second, then shoved my face away. "You are totally impossible." Victoria snapped. "Hey, injured people need comfort," I replied smoothly. She glanced down at the red mark again. "You aren't even hurt," she scoffed. I lightly tapped the red line. "I'm emotionally devastated." She almost laughed at that, all the tense fear finally leaving her shoulders. That is when I slid my hotel business numbers across the table. The dorms were a nightmare: late-night brawls, locked gates, stolen keys, and broke students desperate for a cheap place to crash. I pitched that a student-focused hotel right near campus could easily pull in $300,000 a month, as long as the demand held up. Sure, it was a highly aggressive forecast. But with the nightly chaos happening on campus, it was definitely plausible enough to test out. So, I asked Victoria for $1.5 million. She paced across the room, shaking her head. "Let me get this straight. You staged your own corpse last night, kissed me this morning, and now you want startup capital?" I just shrugged. "You have to admit, it's a very efficient timeline." Victoria looked down at my financial projections, then back at my bruised neck. "Are you really pitching me a business because my fanboys jumped you?" "Nope," I grinned. "I'm just monetizing my customer research." Victoria tapped the page thoughtfully. $12 million makes me a partner," I answered playfully. "I already have way too many relationship labels right now," she countered, leaning back. $2 million, I corrected, looking up. Victoria just kept going. "I want my own income. I refuse to let my parents turn me into another one of their arranged wedding plans. We are accomplices now, and accomplices share the profits. They also share the evidence," she smirked, pointing right at the photo of my bruised neck. The heiress had somehow increased my funding request and totally insulted our partnership all in one smooth move. In the past, women always made me pay just to get their attention, but now, the incredible Victoria Whitmore was actually raising her own investment offer. I held out my hand to seal the deal. $2 million it is, partner. Victoria firmly shook it. She finally left, but not before stealing one last kiss and fiercely warning me to never send a dead-looking photo ever again. I slept in late that day. By the time I woke up, the bank transfer had already cleared. Deposit received, $2 million. That massive number just sat there on my phone screen like a dare. Alden called me before I even finished staring at it. He excitedly told me that Travis finally admitted my luxury watch came straight from Randall Whitmore, and that no broke college kid rents the presidential suite at the Meridian Grand. After that stunt, absolutely nobody in their little circle dared to call me a broke freshman again. I chuckled and told Alden, a little good confusion is way healthier than blind confidence. 2 days after Victoria's massive transfer hit my account, I set up a meeting with Hotel Vice President Laura Crowley, right inside that very empty presidential suite. Laura was the boss who ran all the long-term deals for the Meridian Grand. She confidently slid the standard annual rate sheet across the table, fully expecting this random college student to fold. I didn't even touch the paper. "This suite sits completely empty most weekdays," I told her flatly. "I will guarantee you a full year of occupancy, and I'll bring massive guest spending right along with it." Laura just folded her hands professionally. "Our presidential inventory protects the elite brand of this hotel. I calmly placed the proof of Victoria's $2 million transfer right next to her rate sheet. An empty room protects absolutely nothing. Her arrogant posture instantly changed. Laura tried to pull one last bluff. We have plenty of other exclusive clients. I stood up and grabbed my folder. Cool, then one of them can pay you for tonight. Nobody called my bluff. Laura quickly grabbed the contract back and slashed the gross annual price down to $5,750,000. I paid the entire balance using my special hotel reimbursement card. Eligible system reimbursement, 80%. Final out-of-pocket cost, $1,150,000. System points credited on the out-of-pocket cost only. Laura's entire tone shifted to pure respect before the receipt even finished printing. Mr. Archer, the presidential suite is entirely yours for 1 full year, Laura told me, bowing slightly. The Meridian Grand is also thrilled to extend you our lifetime VIP treatment. She handed me the sleek long-term key card using both of her hands. The original, absurdly high rate sheet just stayed forgotten on the table. Later that weekend, at my brand new Meridian suite, those exact same arrogant seniors walked through a grand door that the hotel staff personally held open for me. I had invited Alden, Cody, my 3 totally embarrassed attackers, and a bunch of friends from their little clique. A top hotel manager practically sprinted to greet me at the elevator. Welcome back, Mr. Archer. Your private dinner is ready in the suite. Travis clearly heard the highly respectful title. The second attacker just swallowed hard, watching the elite manager carefully take my coat. Cody stared around the massive dining room like he had just stepped onto a movie set. Insanely premium food covered the entire table. The staff poured top-shelf drinks and flawlessly remembered all of my personal preferences. Cody peeked through the bedroom door, saw the huge private office and the second dining area, and stumbled back, his voice dropping to a shocked whisper. One of the attacker's girlfriends timidly asked if I actually lived here. Travis answered the question before I even had to. He has this place for the entire year, Travis admitted, completely defeated. The whole table just slowly turned to stare at him in sheer disbelief. He stared down at his plate, avoiding my eyes. Just 2 nights ago, these exact same guys were mocking me for being dead broke, but now? They wouldn't even dare to sit down until I picked my seat first. Travis nervously cleared his throat, bringing up what happened at the dorm. I just gave him a deadpan stare. Sweating under the pressure, he muttered, "Look, we crossed a line." His buddy quickly chimed in, taking that key was a huge mistake. Cody leaned over and whispered to Alden, realizing the pathetic truth. The guy they treated like trash was now getting a full-blown apology dinner. Alden shot back, "That trash is the guy who owns the room now." I sat back and let both of my attackers stumble through their pathetic apologies. Once they finished, I just slid some food their way instead of giving a grand speech. Their dates were too busy staring at the insanely expensive watch Randall had given me. Add in my VIP annual key card and the way the hotel staff bowed to my every whim, and the message was crystal clear. By the time dessert rolled around, not a single person at that table still thought I was faking my wealth. Right in the middle of dinner, a campus-wide email suddenly pinged on our phones. The administration was cracking down. The email cited the unauthorized break-ins and the property damage that the dorm supervisor had officially logged. Crestview was slapping them with a strict 11 p.m. lights-out rule. Just like that, the seniors lost their lucrative underground card games, their wild parties, and their private VIP hookups. Travis had to read the notice twice, looking absolutely devastated. Was Victoria's powerful family behind this sudden crackdown? I took a slow sip of my drink, keeping my mouth shut. Alden glanced around my massive, luxurious suite, doing the math in his head. Our usual hangout spots are all locked down at 11, Alden hinted. I casually slid my spare VIP event keycard across the table, stopping it right under my index finger. This suite stays open but only when I say so, I told him, my voice turning icy. No stolen keys, no stupid ambushes. And if your guests break anything, they pay for it. The rich seniors exchanged nervous glances, realizing the shift in power. Alden finally bit the bullet and asked, "So, what's the price for your approval?" I just smirked and pointed straight at the massive dinner bill. "You bring in guests who can actually pay, and you keep my room spotless. If anyone even thinks about stealing a key again, Travis here is on permanent janitor duty." Travis instantly looked back down at his plate in utter defeat. Cody burst out laughing so hard, he actually had to excuse himself from the table. Their little punishment had completely wiped out their old gambling spot. And just like that, before dinner was even over, my suite had become the new center of power. But peace never lasts long. Alden casually dropped a massive new problem right onto my lap. Seth Driscoll is demanding a controlled fight with you, he warned. He is the absolute strongest senior in our entire circle. Travis and the rest of the guys want their bruised pride back, and they're using him to get it. Right on cue, my phone buzzed with a message from Victoria. My father set up a high-stakes dinner with his top investors. Wear something decent for once. Getting treated like a dead man had surprisingly scored me a luxury suite and a lethal business partner. But the arrogant rich kids I had terrified out of my dorm, now they were begging for one clean, organized fight to settle the score. Clean lasted exactly 30 seconds. Before my first official pool party at the Meridian Hotel even wrapped up, my exclusive suite had already racked up 2 massive new problems. Problem 1, Alden was pushing me to face off against Seth Driscoll, the absolute heavy hitter of their elite circle. Problem 2, Victoria needed me sober, suited up, and perfectly respectable to schmooze her billionaire father's investors. Of course, the violence came knocking first. Enter Damon Thorne. He was a disgustingly entitled upperclassman in designer swim trunks, who honestly believed every woman owed him her time and attention. He was about 5 seconds away from turning a storage room into the biggest, most public mistake of his life. The party was supposed to be my victory lap. The 5-star Meridian staff were even handing out fresh towels before anyone had to ask. Alden's stuck-up friends had finally realized my VIP suite was no rumor. Even Travis, having learned his lesson, kept his greedy hands far away from my doors. Call it progress. Monica Benton, a drop-dead gorgeous and confident senior from Alden's circle, strutted over and joined us by the water. She carried herself like she was born into money. Her sleek black swimsuit was definitely making more than a few guys completely forget that they were there to actually swim. In my defense, I noticed all that too, but I still remembered how to act like a gentleman. Monica slid into the seat right beside me and cheekily lifted my drink. "Calvin, are your guests allowed to steal your drinks?" she purred. I calmly took the glass right back from her hand. "Guests can politely ask." Monica flashed a wicked smile. "Well, that just sounds boring," she teased. "Then go steal Alden's," I shot back. Alden pointed a warning finger from the next lounge chair over. "Hey, keep me out of your little flirting games." The guy had definitely learned when to back off. In my new life, every joke seemed to come with a hidden cost. I scanned the pool. Half the seniors here were only paired up because their rich families had arranged it. Monica gave a subtle nod toward Damon. "My family keeps trying to force us together, just because our social circles align," she groaned, rolling her eyes in pure disgust. "And I just keep walking away," she sighed. Across the deck, Damon was watching Monica laugh with me. You could see his jaw clench in raw jealousy every single time she even glanced in my direction. He had been creeping around her all damn afternoon. Monica had already ditched him twice. Damon heard her reject him loud and clear, which is exactly why the creep started scoping out a quiet, empty room. The second Monica stood up to grab a fresh towel, Damon made his move. He grabbed her wrist right by the dark storage hallway. I instantly noticed her violently pull back. Damon leaned in dangerously close, hissing, "Stop embarrassing me." Monica yanked her arm back and snapped, "Let me go." Instead, the bastard shoved the storage room door open and aggressively dragged her inside. My blood boiled. I was already sprinting across the deck. The heavy door didn't even have a chance to click shut before I wedged my foot right into the frame. Inside the dim room, Damon had Monica pinned against the wall, his arm slamming right next to her head. She looked absolutely furious, but he was blocking her only way out. I violently kicked the door wide open. "I believe she told you to let go," I said, my voice dangerously low. Damon snapped his head toward me. "Get lost, this is private," Monica furiously yelled. "I am trying to leave." Well, that entirely settled the privacy debate. I stepped right between them and locked my grip around Damon's wrist like a vice. The arrogant punk tried to stand his ground and flex. Big mistake. I effortlessly peeled his hand off the wall, twisted his thumb backward, and slammed his entire body into the heavy metal shelving. The impact knocked the wind right out of his lungs, sending a loud crash echoing through the room. A massive stack of folded towels collapsed right onto his pathetic head. Monica quickly slipped past me and made it to the safety of the open doorway, but I kept my cold, dead eyes locked entirely on Damon. "Go back out to the party, Monica," I ordered. She didn't hesitate. Breathing heavily, Damon twisted himself free and shoved off the rattling shelf. "You think having a fancy suite makes you untouchable, you piece of trash?" he screamed in my face. I just gave him a ruthless smirk and replied, "No. But your weak wrist sure made you touchable." His face instantly flushed a furious, embarrassing shade of crimson. Blinded by rage, Damon dropped his shoulder, looking like he actually wanted to finish this fight. I just calmly raised one hand. Take one more step, and I'll drag you out and give the entire pool a live demonstration of how I break your arm. A crowd was already gathering down the hallway, whispering and pointing. Damon quickly noticed the sea of witnesses. Funny how fast his tough guy courage vanished when he realized he was about to get publicly destroyed. He pointed a shaking finger right at me. Seth is gonna tear you apart. I just smirked and told him, bring him on, you clearly need the backup. Damon stormed out through the open doors, completely ignoring Monica as he walked past her. She stood her ground, waiting until he was all the way at the pool. Then, her hand gently found my arm. Thank you. I looked at her, sensing the tension. Do you want to get out of here? Monica shook her head fiercely. No, I want him to watch me stay. She sank right back into the lounge chair next to mine. That single, defiant choice flipped the entire vibe of the party faster than any grand speech ever could. Damon sat fuming across the water, while Monica laughed freely with Alden and me. You could actually see his friends realize that his anger wasn't absolute law anymore. A couple of girls even quietly slid their bags away from his seat. The idiot had tried to isolate us, but all he did was create witnesses and hand me a new enemy. Truly, brilliant work. Later that night, I hosted a lavish dinner right in my suite. Why? Because I'd already learned that a healthy dose of fear is fantastic for repeat business. The guests were falling all over themselves, praising the food, the staff, and the legendary suite. Then, Monica effortlessly dropped the story of what happened into the conversation with just one brutal sentence. Damon's reputation completely tanked before dessert was even served. Celebrating, I ordered the most premium wine for Alden's crew, and boom, that massive purchase triggered my system. Ding, theme skill acquired, alcohol resistance. The rule for this new perk was beautifully simple. My body could instantly process the booze, keeping my mind razor sharp. I tested it out with a full glass. The warm buzz hit my chest, but my brain stayed crystal clear. Alden raised an eyebrow as I downed it. Useful, I muttered. Potentially irresponsible, he shot back, pouring his own glass. Exactly how I liked it. Rich men absolutely love their stupid little drinking tests, and I had Randall's massive investor dinner in exactly 2 days. This new skill guaranteed I wouldn't sign my life away after a few expensive bottles. Alden suddenly dropped his voice. Seth wants that fight. I can keep it strictly in the ring if you agree to it now, before Damien pulls another violent stunt in the hallways. Seth Driscoll wasn't just some guy, he was the undisputed king of the gym in Alden's elite circle. He built his terrifying reputation by winning so cleanly and brutally that other guys did his bragging for him. So? I asked, completely unfazed. What's he trying to prove? That my dorm stunt and the poker game were just cheap tricks? Alden threw a nervous glance at the pool doors. Damon wants a piece of you, too. Travis is probably next. I took a slow sip of my wine. 3 grown men teaming up on one freshman? Alden just shrugged. Pride is incredibly expensive. I glanced around my luxurious suite. Yeah, I've noticed. Alden heavily warned me that Seth was lightning fast compared to the other seniors, and the guy absolutely despised being disrespected in public. I accepted the challenge anyway. Set up the fight, I told him coldly. But I'll be the one setting the price. Rescuing Monica had officially earned me Damon's burning hatred. Winning this suite had earned Travis's rage. And my growing reputation had dragged Seth into the mix. One simple pool party, and I already had 3 guys volunteering to get crushed. The very next afternoon, Victoria picked me up outside the Meridian for the high-stakes dinner with Roland Beckett. He was Randall's ultra-wealthy, politically connected investor buddy. Victoria's fitted cream coat screamed old money, but her glaring expression basically said my current outfit was a personal insult to her entire bloodline. She raked her eyes over me just once. You absolutely cannot meet Roland Beckett looking like some broke freshman who accidentally won a hotel in a card game. Hey, technically, I terrified those people into becoming my loyal customer base, I shot back. Victoria just rolled her eyes and started walking. That exact sentence is why I am buying you a real suit. She explained that Roland Beckett didn't give a damn about ordinary wealth, he only cared about who could stay incredibly useful around truly powerful people. The only reason he was showing up to this dinner was to judge if her father's little college prodigy could actually handle big boy money. Victoria suddenly stopped dead outside a high-end menswear boutique. My insider information comes with a price. I gave her a look. Your father is the one who invited me. The invitation just gets you through the door. I am telling you how to actually survive. All right, I sighed. What's the price? Smirking, Victoria tapped her cheek. I leaned in close to give her a quick peck. At the exact last second, she turned her head, catching the kiss right on her lips. Before I could pull away, her phone flashed. She had just captured the evidence. I stared at the bright screen, completely played. I guess that covers both the consultation fee and a marketing expense? Victoria triumphantly saved the photo. It's rock-solid evidence that my fake boyfriend actually knows how to follow instructions, she teased. The dog still refuses to wear a leash, you know, I replied. Maybe, but the dog is about to wear my suit. Damn it, she totally won that round. Once inside the boutique, Victoria ruthlessly rejected 3 different designer jackets before I even had a chance to touch the fabric. The 4th one hugged my shoulders so perfectly that the snooty sales clerk instantly stopped calling me young man. Stepping close, Victoria reached up and fixed the collar herself. She stood just close enough that the view in the mirror got suddenly, heavily interesting. Hey, in my defense, I whispered, this suit is getting some seriously excellent service. Victoria smoothly flattened the lapel, not missing a beat. Try your hardest not to flirt with the tailor, I smirked. Who said I was talking about you? Her fingers actually paused for a split second before she swiftly stepped back. Listen closely. Roland Beckett uses expensive wine as a brutal social test. Dad joins right in because men his age stupidly mistake liver damage for mutual trust. I raised an eyebrow. Which part actually worries you? The heavy drinking? Victoria narrowed her sharp eyes. Why are you smiling like that's a good thing? I just flashed a grin. My new system perk meant I'd already passed his little test. Exactly 2 evenings later, Victoria escorted me into her father's ultra-exclusive private club for the dinner. The lavish dining room held exactly 4 people who actually mattered in this city. Victoria, her powerhouse father Randall Whitmore, the legendary investor Roland Beckett, and me. Roland Beckett wasn't just rich, he was Randall Whitmore's most dangerous, politically connected friend. The veteran investor coldly calculated the value of Randall's luxury watch sitting on my wrist before he even bothered to look at my face. Breaking the tension, Victoria's father poured the very first glass of wine. Calvin here recovered a highly meaningful chunk of my recent account losses, Randall proudly explained. Roland Beckett simply rested one hand beside his untouched wine. One good result can just be dumb luck, I pointed out, answering his silent doubt. And that is exactly why I heavily prefer delivering repeated results. The veteran investor finally looked intrigued. Tell me then, kid. What would you do with $10 million tomorrow? I didn't even blink. I'd keep the vast majority of it perfectly liquid, waiting patiently until market panic creates a massive discount. I never buy what everyone else is desperately chasing. Roland Beckett shot a glance at Victoria's father, then slowly raised his glass. Victoria had warned me this was coming. That little market question? It was just opening the door for the real test. The wine. That was the true battlefield. Randall Whitmore and the big shot investor tried to match me, drink for drink. By the end of the second glass, Victoria's old man was already sweating and loosening his tie. By the 3rd round, Beckett's mind was slipping, he actually repeated a question. And by the 4th? My hands were completely steady. Thank God for the alcohol-resistant skill. It burned through the booze faster than they could even pour it. Finally, Beckett set his wine glass down with a heavy thud. You've done this before. I just bought the right bottle once, I replied coolly. Victoria's father burst out laughing, way too loud, totally missing the actual answer. The investor threw one last market test my way. I nailed it instantly, skipping the usual corporate kissing up. By the time we hit the final bottle, Whitmore was completely hammered, talking wildly with both hands. Beckett was practically slumped over the table, fighting to stay awake. Me, I sat perfectly upright. And that's when the investor finally dropped the real reward. Managed $10 million for me. Victoria whipped her head around in absolute shock. Beckett pushed on, his words slurring slightly. The principal stays mine. You'll get a management fee, plus a cut of any profits above the benchmark, and Victoria's dad gets full access to the reports. I didn't hesitate. I accept. Victoria finally dropped the act, flashing a proud, genuine smile. $10 million didn't just skyrocket my status, it guaranteed that every bad trade I made now had a very wealthy, very attentive audience. Beckett clumsily stuck his hand out. Make me money, kid. I gripped it firmly. That's exactly the plan. Beside him, Victoria's father tried to toast me, raising his glass and completely missing mine. Both of the older men greedily reached for yet another bottle. I'd already passed their ridiculous test, so I figured it was time to play along. I let my eyes flutter shut and slumped sideways. Victoria caught my head right in her lap. Calvin, she snapped, sounding genuinely panicked. I just let my arm dangle completely limp. Whitmore waved a dismissive hand at my unconscious body. These young kids. Zero endurance. Beckett nodded smugly, looking like he'd finally won his pride back. Thank God, the pouring finally stopped. Victoria leaned in close, her hair brushing my face as she nervously checked my breathing. I cracked open a single eye. Her expression instantly shifted from worry to absolute annoyance. You total fraud. I just smirked and closed it again. Consider that my consulting fee. Victoria hissed, viciously pinching my ear right under the table. She still played her part perfectly, hauling my heavy frame out of the club while her dad and the investor watched with smug approval. Outside, at the Crestview drop-off zone, Renee was just walking out of the campus library, clutching a folder tightly against her chest. She stopped dead in her tracks, catching Victoria literally holding me up. Renee's icy gaze flicked from my passed-out face straight down to Victoria's hand, resting securely on my waist. Well, congratulations, Renee sneered at Victoria. Did you finally find a way to make him shut up? Victoria didn't miss a beat. What's wrong? Are you jealous? Renee just rolled her eyes and yanked the passenger door open, groaning about carrying dead weight. I cracked one eye open again. You know, I can totally hear both of you. Renee's lips pressed into a thin, bitter line. How tragic. I honestly thought the alcohol had finally improved your personality. She spun on her heel and marched off before I could even fire back. Clearly, the ice-cold class monitor still had plenty of fiery attitude left. Victoria aggressively shoved me fully upright. Okay, playtime's over. You're walking on your own now. I chuckled and finally stood up straight. The very next afternoon, Victoria dragged me halfway across a high-end department store as payback for my little stunt. While walking, a sleek bracelet sitting in a glass jewelry case completely caught my eye. It was forged from simple metal with a ridiculously clean design. Exactly the kind of quiet, powerful status symbol I could actually wear without looking like some flashy idiot named Derek had picked it out. The clerk glanced at the tag and gave me an apologetic smile. I'm so sorry, sir. That piece is already reserved. I gave the bracelet one last, lingering look and decided to just leave it be. The shiny accessories could wait. The upcoming bloodbath, however, could not. My phone suddenly buzzed in my pocket before we even made it to the next counter. It was Alden. He called to confirm that Seth had officially accepted the underground fight. But that wasn't all. Damon wanted a piece of me too, completely furious over the whole Monica situation. And Travis? He was desperate to win his shattered pride back after I humiliated him in the car game and forced him to clean the dorms. Seth demanded a brutal 3-on-1 match, all of them against me. I just smirked into the receiver. Alden, bring plenty of cash, a recording camera, and 3 good pens. Victoria practically snatched the phone right out of my hand. Forget it, I'll bring the camera. It was honestly hilarious. Just last night, the city's most powerful adults had eagerly handed me $10 million to manage. And now? 3 insecure college boys wanted to violently prove I didn't deserve the right to stand beside one incredible woman. Honestly, their timing couldn't have been worse. Saturday afternoon finally rolled around. Victoria and I casually strolled into the campus gym, carrying 3 heavy shopping bags and one incredibly stupid, high-stakes wager. I was stuck carrying the bags, while Victoria proudly carried the camera. She smugly referred to herself as my official sponsor. I just called the whole setup unpaid manual labor. Waiting for us, across the fighting mat, were the targets. Seth Driscoll, Damon Thorne, Travis Calderon, and Alden Trower. Seth was the undisputed king of this gym, a guy who treated the very concept of defeat like it was just a nasty rumor meant for weaker people. Damon was that absolute creep who had tried to corner girls at the pool. And Travis? He was the pathetic key thief who had already lost his cash, his dignity, and an entire evening scrubbing fake intestines off the floor. Seriously, this entire social circle was a dumpster fire that desperately needed adult supervision. A dozen imposing seniors were lurking near the weight racks, watching us closely. Seth purposely chose the most public gym on campus because he wanted to violently restore his shattered status right in perfect. A public stage also meant I had plenty of witnesses. Victoria lifted her phone, framing the shot perfectly. I'm hitting record the second the first signature hits the paper. I slammed 3 separate, one-page wagers down on the bench. Every single one of them had to post $10,000. The total prize pool? A cool $30,000. The terms were simple. If I lost, I completely stayed away from Victoria. But if they lost? All three of them had to stay the hell away from her, and I expected my money by noon on Monday. 3 quick signatures would permanently lock in a $30,000 payout and a strict Monday deadline. Alden picked up the page, his eyes widening. Wait, you wrote all this up before you even knew if they would agree? I gave him a cold, knowing smile. I literally put Victoria's name right in the first paragraph. I knew they couldn't resist. Damon aggressively skimmed the first line and sneered. Do you seriously think a piece of paper is going to protect you? I stared right back into his eyes. No. It just stops you pathetic losers from lying about the final payout after I win. Travis nervously glanced over at Victoria. And you actually agreed to this? Victoria didn't flinch, keeping the camera lens trained dead on his face. I only agreed to record you boys signing your pride away. Travis clenched his jaw in pure frustration, grabbed the pen, and signed. Damon furiously scribbled his name next, pressing down so insanely hard he nearly tore right through the paper. Seth? He didn't even bother reading past the dollar amount. He casually signed with one hand and arrogantly shoved the contract back toward me. You're going to be knocked completely unconscious long before the payment even matters, Seth threatened darkly. I just smirked, picked up the pen, and confidently signed my name last. Seth jabbed a finger at Randall's watch, gleaming on my wrist. You're just hiding behind Whitmore money, hotel staff, and cheap little tricks, he spat. I calmly nudged Victoria's bags farther away from the wrestling mat. And yet, you brought 2 grown men just to expose my tricks? I shot back. Damien stepped forward, chest puffed out. You embarrassed the very people trying to teach you some respect, punk. Even Renee is completely sick of you, he sneered. I glanced right at his heavily taped nose. If Renee has a problem, she argues with me herself. Monica begged you to let her go, I reminded him coldly. Neither of those women sent you here to fight their battles. A few students in the crowd snickered, and Damien's face instantly tightened with rage. Seth raised one hand, instantly silencing his lackey. He had trained in this gym for years. Grown men literally moved off the equipment the second he approached. Even Alden was watching his every move with careful eyes. The local king clearly assumed this room would belong to him forever. With a deadly serious glare, Seth stepped right onto the mat. One at a time, I offered, looking dead at Damien and Travis. Or all 3 of you. Your call, Damien scoffed and laughed, while Travis stayed nervously quiet. Alden called out a warning, Calvin, back down. Seth is dead serious, Alden pressed. I know, I answered calmly. Right then, Victoria called out from behind her phone camera, hey, try not to damage the suit, alright? I casually glanced over at her bags. Clearly, my sponsor had her priorities straight. Both Damien and Travis tensed up the moment they realized how perfectly comfortable Victoria felt standing by my side. $30,000 was absolute pocket change compared to getting public access to her. Seth rolled his massive shoulders. After I drop you to the floor, Victoria is walking out of here with us. Victoria's camera didn't even flinch. I walk wherever I choose, she replied coldly. Seth flashed her a cocky smile. You'll definitely choose differently once you see what a loser he really is. I cut in, my voice slicing through the tension. You literally signed a wager just because a woman refused to choose you. The whole room can already see how pathetic that is. A loud laugh echoed from the crowd right behind Seth. His smug smile instantly vanished. He had publicly insulted me, tried to claim Victoria as a prize, and invited a whole audience to watch. The total idiot had built his own stage for his downfall. Sure, 3 men could easily close off every escape angle, but I just needed one of them to get a little too greedy first. I pointed directly at Seth. You first. He took the insult exactly as I intended. Without any warning, Seth lunged forward, his lead foot recklessly cutting right across Damien's path. Damien stumbled and checked his step, forcing Travis to pause awkwardly behind both of them. With just one arrogant choice, Seth had flawlessly reduced 3 attackers down to 1. Seth's massive right fist came rocketing straight toward my jaw. It was incredibly fast and brutally clean. He fully expected me to scramble backward in terror. Instead, I locked my eyes on his shoulder, and then his hip. The punch carried terrifying power, but only because he blindly committed his entire body weight before even knowing where I was going to be. I quickly stepped inside his guard. His fist grazed right past my ear. In a flash, I snatched his wrist with my left hand and violently drove my right forearm straight up under his elbow. Then, I sharply twisted my hips. Seth's center of balance flew in one direction, while his trapped wrist went in the exact opposite. A sickening pop echoed from the joint. He crumpled to one knee before his brain even processed what just happened. The entire gym fell into a dead silence at the crack of bone. A guy lifting weights literally stopped midway to the rack. One of Seth's buddies slowly lowered his phone in pure shock. Alden's entire posture immediately shifted from a peacemaker trying to stop a brawl to a stunned witness. Victoria's camera stayed perfectly fixed on Seth as he stared in horror at his unnaturally bent wrist. I instantly released my grip. "Your strongest guy lasted exactly one punch," I told Damien, and it was his own. Enraged, Damien charged at me before Seth even finished hitting the floor. He had literally just watched their strongest fighter get destroyed in the very first exchange. A much smarter person would have instantly changed the game plan. But Damien had never met a terrible idea that he couldn't make infinitely worse with sheer force. He came barreling in hard, shoulders hiked high, desperately trying to bulldoze me backward with his massive size alone. Back at the pool, he had viciously used a wall to trap Monica. Now, he clearly wanted to use his bulky body to do the exact same thing to me. I casually gave him one step of space. The idiot took it. Then, I quickly shifted to the left and firmly planted my foot. Damien's guard flew wide open as he clumsily turned to follow me. I ruthlessly struck him just once, right across the fragile bridge of his nose. His head snapped violently backward. The crushing impact instantly killed his momentum, folding him completely in half onto his hands and knees. Bright red blood quickly spilled over his upper lip. He just stared blankly down at the mat like it had somehow betrayed him. He just stayed there, pathetically blinking through the blinding pain. This was the exact same Damien who had cowardishly used a wall to trap Monica just days ago. Now, half of the senior gym was watching this tough guy crawl helplessly toward a towel. No villain speech was going to save that humiliating picture. Travis abruptly stopped 3 feet away. He had walked in with his fists raised for a fight. Slowly, nervously, he lowered those fists. The moment I turned my piercing gaze toward him, Travis took a terrified step back. Meanwhile, Seth was still kneeling beside the mat, agonizingly gripping his mangled wrist. Damien was on the floor, desperately clutching his shattered nose. The supposed 3-on-1 beatdown had rapidly devolved into a 1-on-1, and Travis just kept slowly stepping away from the only guy left standing. "Still coming?" I asked with a cold smirk. Travis frantically darted his eyes between the recording camera, the signed $30,000 wager, and the 2 broken men groaning on the floor. "No," Travis answered weakly. Victoria ruthlessly demanded that he repeat it louder for the mic. Travis swallowed a huge lump of fear. "I'm done." A senior standing near the back wall muttered in disbelief. He didn't even have to lay a finger on him. Travis clearly heard the insult, and his shoulders slumped down another defeated inch. Alden quickly stepped between us, waving his hands. "All right, the fight is over." I calmly bent down and scooped up the signed wagers. $30,000 by Monday, I reminded the groaning pile of muscle. And stay the hell away from Victoria. Beside me, Victoria finally lowered her camera just a fraction. "I heard him," Seth growled, glaring up at Victoria through the pane. Unbothered, she smoothly panned her camera from the signatures on the paper straight down to his deformed wrist. Alden practically sprinted to grab an ice pack from the medical kit. Travis hugged the wall, completely avoiding my gaze. Damien just stayed miserably glued to the floor. Every normal exit in the gym was wide open for them to take. Gritting his teeth, Seth shakily pushed himself back onto his feet. Alden hurried toward him with the pack. "Hey, sit down, your wrist desperately needs ice." But Seth violently jerked away. "I'm fine." His breathing had become dangerously sharp and ragged. His good left hand was obsessively opening and closing right beside his back waistband. I narrowed my eyes, locking my focus tightly on his shoulders for any sudden movement. Alden was completely distracted, just watching the severely injured wrist. Victoria, sharp as ever, was catching absolutely everything through her camera lens. Travis had backed himself entirely into the wall, wanting no part of this. Damien just kept desperate pressure on his bleeding nose, not uttering a single word. Slowly, I held up Seth's signed wager page, positioning it perfectly so he could see his looming deadline. Monday at exactly noon, I told him with icy finality. "Pay up, and stay far away from us." His furious eyes locked entirely onto his own signature. Seth just stood there, burning holes into the signed page. Then, he slowly looked over at Victoria's recording camera. From there, his gaze fell right back down to his destroyed, bent wrist. In a flash of pure desperation, his left hand slipped dangerously behind his waistband. Victoria caught the sudden movement first. "Calvin, look out." Behind his back, she screamed. I spun around just in time to hear the chilling click of a folding knife opening in Seth's hand. The coward was actually bringing a blade into a fight that was already over. The students closest to the mat instantly backed away in pure shock. Travis threw both his hands up, wanting no part of this, while Damon just froze dead in his tracks, a bloody towel still pressed against his smashed face. Victoria kept her phone recording, but her voice cracked with sheer terror. "Calvin, move," she yelled. Without warning, Seth lunged right at me from just 3 steps away. His injured right wrist completely threw him off balance, but the lunatic lunged anyway. The deadly point of the blade tracked straight for my ribs. I literally had less than a second to react. 3 steps was way too close to completely back out of his striking range. Turning away would only leave my ribs completely exposed, and Alden was still 2 steps too far to grab Seth's knife arm. I had a split-second choice: dodge late and risk getting stabbed, or stop the weapon head on. I went straight for the knife hand. My bare right palm closed tightly over the sharp steel blade. A blinding flash of pain hit me even before I saw the deep cut. Ignoring the agony, I snatched Seth's knife wrist with my left hand and drove it brutally toward the floor. As the bastard resisted, the blade tore dangerously deep across my palm. Warm blood immediately poured over my fingers, causing my grip to weaken, and Seth, feeling his advantage, started pushing even harder. Gritting my teeth, I trapped his left elbow tightly against my ribs, quickly stepped outside of his leg, and used his own reckless momentum to twist him right off his feet. With a violent rotation of his arm, I slammed him face first straight into the hard mat. The impact jarred the knife loose from his grip. It clattered down, striking our signed wager and sliding right across the paper. A thick, crimson line of my own blood trailed right behind it. Victoria screamed my name in absolute panic. Alden finally rushed in, kicking the bloody knife away and pinning Seth's shoulder, even though I already had the trash pinned down. Travis looked like he had seen a ghost, completely flattening himself against the gym wall. Damon just stared blankly at the pool of blood, completely forgetting about his own busted nose. Seth struggled once under Alden's heavy grip, but Alden drove his knee down hard, flattening him completely. "Stop it, you already lost," Alden barked. Seth finally stopped moving. That was the bitter reality he had violently refused to accept just 30 seconds earlier. Victoria dropped to her knees right beside me, her phone still bravely recording every second of the aftermath. She frantically grabbed a clean towel from the gym bench and wrapped it tightly around my bleeding palm. Her hands were shaking uncontrollably. "Keep the pressure on it," she ordered, trying to sound tough. I pressed down hard. My blood instantly soaked right through the first layer of the towel. The searing pain literally had a heartbeat of its own now, and worse, my fingers just wouldn't close the right way. My mysterious system could easily boost my physical strength, sure. But magical medical restoration? That feature was still locked behind a higher level. Meaning, I had no instant cheat code to fix this. As we waited inside the tense gym, Victoria peeked at the deep cut and went completely pale. "Save the video right now, and send at least one backup copy," I told her firmly. I told her to do it. Victoria obliged while tying the bloody towel tighter around my hand. That crystal-clear footage was our golden ticket. It showed his signed loss, her desperate warning, and Seth cowardly pulling a knife long after the fight was over. But right now, my mangled hand was the real problem. Alden kept his knee firmly planted on Seth. A brave student near the weights carefully wrapped the dropped knife in a gym towel and moved it far away from the psycho. There was zero celebration. The whole room had shown up expecting a fun underdog brawl. Instead, they got front row seats to me holding a gaping knife wound together. Victoria pressed down even harder on my palm, making me sharply inhale through my gritted teeth. She totally snapped at me. "Don't you dare act like you are calm right now, just don't." She yanked the towel tighter, and I wisely decided to shut my mouth. The main gym doors swung open as a massive crowd of students gathered out in the hall. Someone gasped at Damon's ruined nose. Another student pointed at Seth pinned under Alden. But everyone stared at the white towel rapidly turning a deep, dark red. The crazy campus rumors started twisting before we even reached the exit doors. One stunned student whispered that 3 angry seniors had jumped me all at once. Another idiot confidently claimed, "Oh, they definitely fought over Victoria." Hilariously, not a single person asked about the actual wager money. The wild campus gossip mill had already completely romanticized a brutal knife attack into some dramatic fight over the pretty girl. Victoria just kept her arm wrapped tightly around my waist, rushing me out toward the parking lot. Alden trailed behind us just long enough to make absolutely sure Seth stayed pinned down with plenty of eyewitnesses around him. Travis couldn't even look me in the eye. Damon just sat pitifully against the gym wall. And Seth? He stayed trapped on the mat with one totally useless wrist and a camera full of damning proof against him. Against all odds, I had brutally beaten all three of those jerks, but the cost was high. My right hand couldn't even feel two of its own fingertips properly. 10 minutes later, Victoria was speeding recklessly through the city, reaching over to press another folded cloth against my bleeding palm at every single red light. "Hey, keep your eyes on the road," I warned her. She fiercely told me to shut up and let her drive. The bright emergency room doors finally slid open ahead of us. Our little wager was officially settled and won, but my medical nightmare had just begun. Inside the cold city hospital, the attending doctor carefully cleaned out my hand. Victoria stood close by, tightly gripping both her phone with the saved recording and my ruined, bloody sleeve. The coward's blade had cut viciously deep straight across my right palm. The doctor laid out 3 hard facts for me. I desperately needed stitches. Regaining full use of my hand could take up to 2 agonizing months. And the ugly scar? That was probably permanent. Seth had lost the fight fair and square, but he managed to leave me with a 2-month recovery bill. The doc calmly asked me to try and move each finger. My thumb twitched and moved. My index finger just trembled weakly. The last 2 fingers barely even responded to my brain. Victoria watched my every painful attempt, anxiously counting under her breath. She had somehow stayed cool as ice while driving us here, but watching this finger test made her own hands shake uncontrollably. "Try it again," she urged, her voice breaking. The doctor quickly stopped her. "No, he needs to keep the hand perfectly still for now." Victoria gave a single, tense nod and went dead quiet, standing faithfully beside my hospital bed with my dried blood staining her cuff. Her phone just kept vibrating nonstop with urgent calls and frantic messages, but she completely ignored all of them. I looked at her and said, "Send that video to 2 safe backup places immediately. And whatever you do, keep the original file safe." Victoria didn't argue for a second, she just tapped away and got it done. She also texted Randall the exact name of the hospital, assured him that she was completely unhurt, and sent him a copy of the crazy footage. His text reply popped up right before the doctor brought out the needle. "I am on my way." That video recording was my absolute shield. It would stop that snake Seth from spinning some fake story about the knife. But sadly, actual healing still strictly belonged to the slow passage of time, or a heavily level-locked system function I couldn't access yet. The doctor injected the stinging numbing medicine, sliding the sharp needle right near the bloody cut. Victoria cringed and looked away for half a second, but then bravely forced herself to watch the whole thing. Dull, throbbing pain still radiated up through my injured wrist. This was the absolute worst timing. My massive national investment challenge was fully active. Roland had literally just trusted me with $10 million. Randall's high-stakes account still desperately needed to see results. And our huge hotel venture was currently hanging by a thread, existing only as a rented suite, a risky forecast, and Victoria's own $2 million. And here I was, the underdog with a right hand that couldn't even close into a fist. That brutally answered one immediate problem, but it just made every other multi-million-dollar problem a whole lot worse. A hospital worker demanded to know how my hand got shredded, and whether security needed to pull the camera footage. I gave them the brutally honest version. 3 guys agreed to a fistfight. I won. Then, one sore loser pulled a blade. When it was over, beside me, Victoria just lifted her phone. "It is all on video," she said. The worker gave a quick nod and left us alone. That is when the first agonizing stitch pierced my skin. Victoria gripped the metal bed rail so fiercely that her knuckles turned bone white. Slowly, she forced herself to let go. Her anxious eyes darted from the medical tray to the door, and then back to my face. For months, Victoria had been the girl who controlled every room she walked into. But here? The doctor and the ticking clock called all the shots. Just before the final stitches went in, a campus forum notification popped up on Victoria's screen. A massive headline claimed the national finance prodigy got slashed in a wild brawl over a girl. The post featured a blurry photo from the gym and leaked the hospital's name. Look, I only agreed to a cash wager. But the campus rumor mill had already spun it into a dramatic love triangle war. One commenter swore I was throwing down for Victoria's honor. Another blamed Renee for starting the whole mess. A third guy practically invented a championship title for the winner. Honestly, campus gossips could watch 3 guys sign a literal cash contract and still graduate having learned the exact wrong lesson. Dropping the hospital's name gave every frantic student a direct map to my bed. 2 minutes later, panicked footsteps echoed down the hallway at a full sprint. Kayla Donnelly burst in first. This girl, a total gold digger with a calculator for a heart, used to weigh the price tag of every gift before she even looked at me. Now, she bolted across the room, completely ignoring everyone else. "Calvin," Kayla cried, grabbing my right arm and yanking it tight against her chest. Blinding pain shot through my fresh stitches. I groaned, a harsh sound I definitely did not plan. The nurse instantly snapped, "Hey. That is the injured arm." Kayla dropped me so fast she almost crashed into the medical tray, all the color drained from her face. I am so sorry. I did not know where he was hurt." I cradled my heavily bandaged hand against my chest. Kayla's eyes welled up with tears. You could have been killed." The entire room fell dead silent. Renee Chandler walked in right behind her, panting heavily and clutching her trusty class monitor folder like a shield. Renee froze the second she saw the bloody bandages. Our fierce class monitor tried to mask her panic before anyone noticed, but man, she totally failed. "What on earth happened?" Renee demanded. "Victoria beat me to the punch. Seth pulled a blade right after Calvin utterly crushed them. All three of them." Renee stared at me, totally stunned. "All three?" I gave her a single nod. Kayla tried to inch toward my bed again, but Victoria smoothly blocked her path. "He needs his space," Victoria warned her coldly. Kayla glared at the red stains on Victoria's sleeve. "You are not a nurse, you know." Victoria proudly lifted her chin. "No, I am his girlfriend." Renee whipped her head around so fast she nearly got whiplash. "Since when?" Victoria did not miss a beat. "Since way before you came running over here." Kayla pointed a trembling finger at me. "Did he even agree to that?" I kept my mouth shut. Victoria's expression remained stone cold. The doctor yanked the neck stitch tight, making me wince. That instantly shut down the argument. Renee dropped her folder on a chair and stepped closer to the bed. She looked anxiously at the doctor. Will he still be able to write?" The doctor sighed and repeated his grim estimate. 2 months until he regains full use, and it will likely leave a permanent scar." Renee stared down at my ruined hand. We both knew the upcoming investment challenge required absolute speed. She knew my novel needed pages done, too, but only I knew this injury could completely wreck both of my deadlines. Renee gently took my uninjured left hand, carefully avoiding the bandages. "Can you manage to type one-handed?" she asked softly. "Terribly," I admitted. Renee immediately made a promise. "I will send you all the challenge notes tonight." Her tone shifted, suddenly sounding super official. "I am the class monitor. I will personally handle all of his academic notes." Kayla crossed her arms, clearly annoyed. "Well, I can help him outside of class." Victoria shot back instantly. "He already has plenty of help." I just sighed and sank back into my pillows. Kayla whipped out her phone and immediately started canceling whatever plans she had for the day. Meanwhile, Renee started rattling off the list of classes I was going to miss. Victoria quickly reminded both of them that the doctor had not even discharged me yet. Then, her sharp gaze locked onto Renee. "Damon dropped your name right before the fight started," Victoria revealed. "He claimed your anger gave him the perfect excuse to put Calvin in his place." Renee froze completely. Renee's face twisted with guilt. I never asked him to fight Calvin." "I know," Victoria replied calmly. "But he used you as his excuse anyway." Renee looked back down at my bandaged hand. Raw guilt entirely shattered her strict class monitor mask. She stepped even closer. "Calvin. I honestly did not know." "I know," I told her quietly. Kayla gently touched Renee's shoulder, but Renee stood absolutely paralyzed. Victoria stayed glued to my other side, her phone still tightly gripped in her hand. The girl, everyone once treated like a total doormat, was now single-handedly running my hospital schedule. Finally, the doctor tied off the last stitch and wrapped my palm in fresh gauze. But before any of these girls could claim my next hour, the heavy door swung open. Randall Whitmore walked in. He took one look at the blood on Victoria's clothes, and instantly stopped treating anyone else like they mattered. This guy, the father who was practically speed-running our wedding plans, marched straight over to my bed. "Calvin. How bad is it?" I held up my wrapped hand. 2 months, sir, and a permanent scar." Randall's jaw clenched with silent fury. He quickly inspected Victoria from head to toe. "Were you hurt?" Victoria just shook her head. "I recorded the whole thing," she said. Randall snatched the phone, watched just enough to see Seth draw his weapon, and handed it right back. His expression turned incredibly dark. "Did that coward attack after the fight was already over?" Randall demanded. "The video proves it," Victoria answered firmly. Randall gave a single, terrifying nod. Whatever brutal payback he was planning to unleash, that would happen after we left the hospital. For now, he just dragged the chair closer to my bed. Then, Randall glared at the doctor with total authority. Give Calvin the absolute best treatment money can buy. Whatever he needs, get it done. The hand is stable. But recovery takes time, the doctor announced, his clinical tone slicing through the heavy tension in the room. That final verdict instantly shut down Randall's endless barrage of anxious questions. Randall's sharp gaze dropped from my heavily bandaged hand to the flashy Whitmore watch, gleaming on my left wrist. You've got the upcoming competition, that massive hotel project, and 2 major accounts to juggle, he reminded me, the weight of my impossible odds hanging in the air. I know, I muttered, clenching my jaw. Randall didn't miss a beat. Then you'd better heal up fast, he fired back, before your stupid pride ends up making another disastrous decision for you. Coming from him, that biting remark was the closest thing I'd ever get to a scolding. But despite the harsh words, he sighed heavily and dragged his chair a little closer to my hospital bed. The room was packed with way too much drama. Kayla shifted uncomfortably against the back wall, Renee stood stiffly clutching her work folder, and Victoria had a white-knuckled grip on my bed rail. Randall slowly looked at the 3 women, and then shot me a look of pure disbelief. Watching Randall establish his territory right beside me, Renee quietly reached out and grabbed Kayla's arm to leave. But Kayla immediately yanked her arm back, her eyes flashing. No way, I am staying right here. His family is here now, Renee whispered to her, her tone leaving zero room for debate. Defeated, Kayla finally stopped fighting it, while Victoria just stood there, completely silent and unreadable. Randall accepted the family label without batting an eye. I couldn't even force a single word out. My heavily wrapped hand physically refused to close into a fist, and Monday's brutal investment challenge was looming over me like a total death sentence. I had 2 volatile accounts to manage and a high-stakes hotel plan hanging by a thread. Plus, there was the crazy twist that Renee still completely trusted my secret, anonymous voice without realizing it was actually me. To make matters even more chaotic, Victoria's fake dating arrangement with me had just been dragged out into the light, right in front of Randall. Right on cue, the nurse stepped in and announced that only one visitor could stay after the doctor left. Kayla immediately opened her mouth to fight for the spot, and Renee shot a calculating look straight at Victoria. But before either of these fierce women could start a turf war, Randall cut them off with absolute authority. Victoria stays. Knowing when she was beaten, Renee practically dragged a pouting Kayla out toward the hospital hallway. The nurse swiftly pulled the privacy curtain shut, leaving me completely trapped in this wild situation.